Well, there you are.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Obeisance.
Hari Bolo. How are you, Prabhu?
I'm very good. Very good to be with all of you.
Thank you, thank you. I did jump the gun in one sense, because when I advertised that you were giving class, I sent your bio to both forums, but you still, I don't think you need any introduction, although I would say that my experience with you is that I was in Radhadesh, as I usually spent a week or two a year visiting our friends Vishnumurti and Lakshmi Priya, and I went to Bhagavatam class like I did every day, and all of a sudden there you were. I had no idea who you were, and you gave a Bhagavatam class and it blew me away. So I'm not overselling you. I'm sure you will respond to stimuli, just like you always do. But for all of us, pay good attention, because this is a very insightful and incisive and bright devotee speaking to us. So this is Bhuta-Bhavana Prabhu, disciple of Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And the verse today, is 427.9. I hope it suits you well. Please take it away. And again, very grateful that you're talking to us today.
Well, first of all, I'm very grateful to be given the opportunity to share something with all of you. A very wonderful verse. And what we'll do is we'll just say prayers, and then we'll read the verse in the purport translation and then go from there. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, as Prabhu said, 4th canto, chapter 27, verse number 9. And this area of the Bhagavatam is the story of King Puranjana. Okay, so I'll read the Sanskrit word for translation, and then the purport. It's quite a lot of very interesting things here. Putranam Jabavan Putra Eke Kasyas Shatam Ve by Puranjano Vamsaha Panchale Su Sameditaha. Word for word. Putranam, of the sons, Cha, also. Abhavan, were produced. Putraha, sons. Ekasya, of each one. Shatam, 100. Shatam, 100. Ye, by whom? Vai, certainly. Puranjanaha, of King Puranjana. Vamshaha, family. Panchaleshu, in the land of Panchala. Sameditaha, greatly increased. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Of these many sons, each produced hundreds and hundreds of grandsons. In this way, the whole city of Panchala became overcrowded by these sons and grandsons of King Puranjana. If you understand the context through the purport. We must remember that Puranjana is the living entity, and the city Panchala is the body. The body is the field of activity for the living entity. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Kshetra, there are two constituents. One is the living entity, Kshetra, and the other is the body of the living entity, Kshetra. Any living entity can know that he is covered by the body if he only contemplates the body a little bit. Just with a little contemplation, he can come to understand that the body is his possession. One can understand this by practical experience and by the authority of the Shastras. In Bhagavad Gita 2.13, it is said Dehinosmin yata dehi. The proprietor of the body, the soul, is within the body. The body is taken as the Panchala Desha, or the field of activities wherein the living entity can enjoy the senses in their relationship to the 5 sense objects, namely Gandha, Rasa, Rupa, Sparsha, and Shabda. That is, sense objects made out of earth, water, fire, air, and sky. Within this material world, covered by the material body of subtle and gross matter, every living entity creates actions and reactions, which are herein known allegorically as sons and grandsons. So, point to emphasize here. So that this is an analogy, and when it's talking about the sons and grandsons of Paranjana, what Prabhupada is saying here, it means the actions and reactions. Yeah. So I'll read this again. Within this material world, covered by the material body of subtle and gross matter, every living entity creates actions and reactions, which are herein known allegorically as sons and grandsons. There are 2 kinds of actions and reactions, namely pious and impious. In this way, our material existence becomes coated by different actions and reactions. In this regard, Srila Narottam Das Thakur states, Karma Kanda Jnana Kanda Kevala Vishera Bandha Amrita Baliya Yeba Kaya Nana Yoni Sada Pire Kadaya Bakshana Kare Tara Janma Adaha Pate Yaya. Fruitive activities and mental speculation are simply cups of poison. Whoever drinks of them, thinking them to be nectar, must struggle very hard life after life in different types of bodies. Such a person eats all kinds of nonsense and becomes condemned by his activities of so-called sense enjoyment. Thus, the field of action and reactions by which one's descendants are increased begins with sex life. Paranjana increased his whole family by begetting sons, who in their turn begot grandsons. Thus, the living entity, being inclined towards sexual gratification, becomes involved in many hundreds and thousands of actions and reactions. In this way, he remains within the material world simply for the purpose of sense gratification and transmigrates from one body to another. His process of reproducing so many sons and grandsons results in so-called societies, nations, communities, and so on. All these communities, societies, dynasties, and nations simply expand from sex life. As stated by Prahlad Maharaj, Yanmai Tunadi Grihamedi Shukam, Hitu Cham, Bhagavatam 7.9.45. A Grihamedi is one who wants to remain within this material existence. This means that he wants to remain within this body or society and enjoy friendship, love, and community. His only enjoyment is in increasing the number of sex enjoyers. He enjoys sex and produces children who in their turn marry and produce grandchildren. The grandchildren also marry and in their turn produce great-grandchildren. In this way, the entire earth becomes overpopulated, and then suddenly there are reactions provoked by material nature in the form of war, famine, pestilence, and earthquakes, etc. Thus, the entire population is again extinguished, simply to be recreated. This process is explained in Bhagavad Gita 8.19 as repeated creation and annihilation, Budva Budva Praliyate, due to a lack of Krishna consciousness. All this creation and annihilation is going on under the name of human civilization. This cycle continues due to a man's lack of knowledge of the soul and the supreme personality of Godhead. A very strong verse in purple by Prabhupada. Okay, we'll just say some prayers and then we'll go from there. Chakshur militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadekamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Virjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavneshwari Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitnam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I have to begin by saying what a pleasure it is to be with all of you. I'm very humbled to see my senior good family, my seniors, and I'm begging the blessings of all of my seniors very sincerely. Mother Vrajalila, Ekavir, Achyuta, Sarvatma Prabhu, Bubrit, all of the Parijata, by your Ajamil Prabhu, by your grace, if you're kind upon me, we'll be able to say something that will be pleasing to the Guru Parampara. So sincerely requesting your mercy. I'm just going to do a quick prayer to my spiritual master. So this is a very interesting verse in purport. I'll begin by actually saying, when I read this it elicited very, very strong emotions in me. And I want to tell you what really drew my heart and drew my attention in this verse in purport. Let's read the verse again. Of these many sons, each produced hundreds and hundreds of grandsons. In this way, the whole city of Panchala became overcrowded by these sons and grandsons. So in this verse and in this purport and in this area of the Bhagavatam, there's such a deep lesson that, to be honest with you, as communities of devotees, we keep failing to grasp. The trouble with our ISKCON movement is that you can hear the same thing so many times that we become desensitized. What is the point here? This dehino smin yata dehi. The first lesson is that you and I, we're not these bodies, you know? And people think in our movement that it's just a nice thing to it's a nice philosophical point, but let's get to something else. Wrong. Every single one of us, however old we are physically, our body is growing old. And what many people in our movement don't understand is that unless we really accept we're not the body, we are going to suffer like a dog. What do I mean by that? You see, we think that everyone goes through the same experience. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Dosha, and Darshanam. Birth, death, old age, disease. But that's not actually true. That's false. There are different degrees of material experience, bodily experience, based upon the degree of identification with the material body. We saw that many times, all of us. We saw that with Srila Prabhupada, the final lesson. Prabhupada, he's skin and bone, right? In fact, you could see the veins and the nerves. It was intense. It was intense. But why is it that Prabhupada isn't howling in pain? Before Prabhupada left the planet, a doctor examined Prabhupada's body and said, Prabhupada, there is so many things wrong with your body that you should be screaming in pain. We saw in the example of my own spiritual master, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, his body is in a very, very emaciated state. But there's some difference in the level of consciousness. And what we often miss is that these lessons, because we're dealing with a compassionate Krishna, we're dealing with a compassionate Krishna, we're dealing with someone who loves us more than we love ourselves. I'm going to repeat that because we don't understand it properly. He loves us more than we love ourselves. So when he's delivering a message, what we should understand, he actually comes in the mood of a very soft-hearted and very humble person. I know what's going to happen to your body tomorrow, or next week, or next month, or next year, or even the next second, the next minute. I know what's going to happen to your body. If you accept what I'm sharing with you, it's going to happen to your body, but it's not going to happen to your consciousness. You know? So our bodies are they're growing older. They have grown older, are growing older, will grow older. But it's not going to happen to our consciousness if we accept and truly cultivate this understanding that Prabhupada very clearly outlines here in this purple, that I'm not the body, I'm the soul. He says it, he's going to say it again. You're going to read a different book, he's going to say it again. You're going to read a different book, he's going to say it again. And a lot of devotees in our movement, no one says this officially, but they're going to think, you know what, Prabhupada keeps telling me I'm not the body. How many times do you have to say the same thing? Oh my God, Prabhupada. You know, can't we get to something else? Can't you give me some other lyrics? The way that this scripture works is that everything is built upon another foundation. I remember hearing in a class from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and I saw this so powerfully. He says, start strong. When you do your spiritual life, start strong. Translation. What does it mean to start strong? It means in spiritual life, build your foundation very, very strong. Because everything else that you're going to do in this KC, in this Krishna consciousness, is actually resting on the foundation. In other words, you and I, to be really honest, we're only as good as our foundations. You and I, we're as good as our chanting. We're as good as our association. We're as good as our hearing. We're as good as our reading. We're as good as our service attitude. Foundation. We're all one family, and we have an extraordinary opportunity to taste ecstasy if we understand what we're being given here. In this whole area of the story of Puranjana, it's an allegory. Why is Narada Muni giving an allegory? The technical term for this is parokshavad. It means you explain something to someone indirectly. Very, very interesting. All this allegory, Puranjana. Prabhupada will explain that Puranjana is a living entity. Here, we're hearing about his many sons who each produce hundreds and hundreds of grandsons, and Prabhupada is explaining the purport and actions and reactions. Right? Because as long as we have actions and reactions in this material world, we have to come back. You know? I was having a very, very interesting discussion with my wife this morning. We were talking about this point, and it was actually relevant to this verse in purple. You see, what happens is the following. We have so many things in our Shastra which, to be honest with you, are controversial. Let's be very, very honest. There's loads of things in our scriptures which are controversial, and people struggle with them. Many things. But actually, they're not so controversial if we take the stance given here. For example, let's think about this body as a vehicle, because this body is a vehicle. Okay? Now, it is the case that devotees at a certain level of realization, and I think some of us, we know devotees like this, they can understand what this person or who this person was in the previous life, right? I think some of you know what I'm talking about. Now, I think it's in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and I've heard this distinct directly in a class by Tamal Krishna Maharaj as well. So Prabhupada would also be able to do is, he may look at someone And you may see, okay, in your previous life, you were in this particular body. In another life, you were in this particular body. I can't remember where it was, but it may have been the memories of Prabhupada or something like that. And Prabhupada was speaking about one person, and he explained that in their previous life, they were in this body. In the previous life, they were in this body. So what happens is a pure devotee can look at someone, if Krishna wants to give him this ability, and he may look and see, you know what, you've been driving many different cars. In this lifetime, you're in a female vehicle, but in your previous life, you drove a male vehicle. In this lifetime, you're in a black vehicle. In a previous life, you were in a white vehicle. In another life, you were in a brown vehicle. But these vehicles are not you. And in fact, when I'm talking about the vehicle, I'm speaking about it knowing full well that you've driven every type of vehicle that's available. You understand the point? So when I talk about the vehicle, I'm talking about the vehicle knowing full well that that vehicle has nothing to do with you. It's just another vehicle that you're driving. The vehicle is secondary. Why is the vehicle secondary? Because it's all about the destination. Every single one of us in this class, we've got a ticket. It's a flight ticket. Okay? You look at the flight code, it says KC108. That's the flight. We have to reach the airport by a certain time, and then when we catch that flight, KC108, it's a one-way flight. There's no return. One-way flight to Goloka Vrindavan. But we have to get to the airport on time with the vehicle that we've been given. So you're not the vehicle, true. At the same time, the other extreme is also wrong. You're not the vehicle yet, but we have to look after this vehicle, because this vehicle, it better get us somewhere. This vehicle has to get us to that destination, and we have to get to that destination on time. If we miss the flight, then we have to end up traveling again in the vehicle to another airport. We miss the flight, we have to keep traveling, transmigrating, birth, old age, disease, death, wheel of samsara. Wheel of samsara. If I don't catch that flight, I come back. Then I have to drive another vehicle and trying to get to the airport. If I don't catch that flight, I come back. So I'm not the vehicle, but the vehicle is necessary in order to get me to my particular goal. And in order to get to my particular goal, I have to always also watch out for this identification with the body. You can do whatever you want. We can do whatever we want. But if we identify with the body, we're going to increase all of our suffering. Okay? Very, very important point to understand. There is no neutral point in this material world. I may think, okay, I want to identify my body. Okay, that means you want to identify with birth, old age, disease, and death. Good luck. Sometimes we play this down. Think about this. I'm coming to your house. I'm going to force you into a cabinet in your house. I'm going to lock you in that cabinet in your house, and you're going to stay there for 9 months. How do you feel? So that's the experience of the living entity within the womb, trapped for 9 months. Bhagavatam says, what happens when we're in the womb? What happens when we're in the womb is we are praying intensely. Krishna, please get me out of here. If you just get me out of this suffering, I promise you in this lifetime, I'm going to surrender to you. The Bhagavatam says that that's our prayer. And then we come out. And then we forget how much we suffered. We forget how much we suffered. And because we forget how much we suffered, it's not too bad. And then the cycle continues. So these actions, these reactions are actually based upon identity. This is my key point. This verse, as Prabhupada says in the beginning of this purport, and Paranjana, we must remember that Paranjana is the living entity. So Paranjana is us. And the city, Panchala, is the body. So as long as I'm in that bodily consciousness, I have to suffer. And it doesn't matter what I do, how I get out. Now, at the same time, this is where it gets tricky. Nothing and no one should be mistreated because of the particular vehicle that they have. You see? So we have to make sure that everyone is taken care of and dealt with properly, but not because we're the body. Not because we're the body. We have to make sure everyone is treated properly and taken care of properly because they are mamai vamso jiva loke, jiva bhutan sanatana, manashishtan indriyani prakritishtani kashati, because they are mama, eva, amsa. Everyone is part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, no one should be mistreated. Everyone is an eternal servant of Krishna. Therefore, no one should be mistreated. Everyone is dear to Krishna. Therefore, no one should be mistreated. Everyone should be honored and given proper facility to achieve the goal of human life. But we're not this body. We're not this vehicle. Something even more intense. Whatever situations that caused us not to go back home, back to Godhead in our previous life, the same situation is going to come up in this life. This is a deep point. You know, I remember I was hearing this class recently and it's just so deep. So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was saying that. He said, what happens after a while, if you keep failing the test, you become embarrassed and you'll even try to deny the school. You'll say, oh, the school's no good, the teacher's no good. Because actually you're just so embarrassed because we keep failing the same test. It's a deep point. You know, I was in Switzerland recently. So we did a youth retreat in Switzerland. And we got the devotees to do a little exercise. We got them to write something down. I said to them, look, we all know that, see, you know, we sometimes talk, we don't know what we did in our previous lives. We don't need to worry about that. Whatever patterns were unresolved from our previous life, those patterns will be here with us in this life. So all we need to do is look at the patterns in this life. So we can even do an exercise, and I'm going to encourage you to do this in your own time. We should think, where am I weak? Very simple. You can actually do two things. Where am I strong in spiritual life? For example, some of you, and I've known many of you for many years, you have very good sadhana, right? Very strict, very regulated, under all conditions, the sadhana gets done. Powerful. For someone else, where they're very strong, very good dealings with devotees, you know, a genuine, real heartfelt love of the Vaishnavas, real appreciation of the Vaishnavas, really relish Vaishnava association. For someone else, where they're strong, very deep study of the Shastra, really love to understand how everything fits together. For someone else, beautiful service attitude, loves to serve, serves with their heart. You can literally feel the love with which they serve. So you could ask yourself, where am I strong? And then we can see how to leverage that. You know, you're strong in this area, wonderful. How can you use that more to both accelerate the mission and to taste real nectar in your own spiritual life? One side of the equation. The other side of the equation is, where are we weak? Different areas. One devotee, you know what, they're so wonderful, but they just cannot help engaging in prajalpa. Yeah, did you hear about him? Right, you know her, right? She did that with him, and then their guru found out, and then that happened to them. You know, and the next thing you know, they're talking about it with one person, then 5 people, then 10 people, then there's an Instagram post that's gone viral, whatever it is. One devotee, wonderful, but they just cannot avoid prajalpa. Another devotee, wonderful Vaishnava or Vaishnavi, but they're just so envious. You know? So therefore, whatever's going on, I've got to find a little way to, you know, bring that person down. How dare you do more service than me? It's just an envy thing. But they're wonderful in other ways. You know, it often confuses the devotees. Are they a demon or a demigod? Oftentimes we're both. To be very honest, oftentimes we're both. Oftentimes we have so many wonderful qualities, and there's just some salt in the ointment, as they say. We have so many wonderful qualities, but there's still also this other side that needs to be worked on. Someone else, wonderful Vaishnava, but they're so lazy. You know, I will not do any service unless you hold me at gunpoint. Yeah. So where are we strong? And then the other side, where are we weak? And if we can understand where we are weak, we can understand ahead of time, Maya's going to attack me in this particular area. Okay, but because Krishna's so kind, Krishna says to Maya, look, I know you can attack him in this particular area. Give me 5 minutes or 5 days or 5 hours. I'm going to tell him before you attack him, dude, you need to do something in this particular area because Maya's planning to attack you in about maybe 5 hours, 10 hours, 10 days, whatever it is. Krishna is so kind that he always gives us the heads up. It's real. Krishna is so kind that he always gives us the heads up because he wants us to be successful. He wants us to be successful. So in our spiritual journey, we can only build upon our foundations. If I don't really accept that I'm not the body, good luck. Good luck. When the intense issues come with the body, which is going to happen to each and every one of us, I'm going to be experiencing it a lot more intensely. And then we may think, oh, it's just the body, it's just the way things are. Wrong, wrong. It's because I did not let go of the identification with my body. I thought it was cool. I thought I want to be spiritual, but I want to hold on to the material attachment at the same time. And what's the deepest type of material attachment? It's this idea that I'm this body. Aham mamati. I'm the body, and Prabhupada will even go on in this purport. He talks about the subtle body as well, the mind. You know, that's it. That's the point that he's making. That's the point that he's making. If we hold on to these identifications, everything that happens to this body will happen to the consciousness as well. But it's not inevitable, ladies and gentlemen. It's not inevitable. We don't have to experience the difficulties of the body in that same intense way that someone who is just in material consciousness has to experience. There's one statement in the Bhagavatam, I believe, where it says that death is like the sting of 1,000 scorpions. That's deep. I'm going to tell you something that's a little esoteric. So I know one devotee, a friend of mine told me this. So one devotee passed away. This was quite some years ago. And this devotee, their spiritual master, is very exalted. So in the last stages of the person's life, the spiritual master was not able to be there with them physically. But the spiritual master started giving them some instructions. They were on their deathbed. The spiritual master was on the phone. And he explained to them, when you leave your body, this is what you're going to see. And he explained to them what they were going to see. And he gave them specific directions to direct the soul that as you leave your body, this is what you'll see, this is what you should do, this is how you should proceed in order to come to the spiritual platform. And I was just thinking how deep that is. You know, many of us, we've known each other, we've loved, we've lived, we've served together, we've been in missions together. It's a very, very wonderful transcendental family. It is such an extraordinary honor to be here with all of you, knowing that you're all extremely rare and special individuals who've come under the line of Lord Chaitanya, who've come under the line of the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, who've come under the line of Srila Prabhupada and all of his generals. It's not a small thing. You know, to be really honest, in one sense, you could say that all of you guys as devotees, you're the elite of the elite. This is not even Krishna consciousness. This is Lord Chaitanya's Nam Sankirtan movement, because that Lord Chaitanya, he's rarely understood. And they talk, what is it they say? Chana avatar, Gupta avatar, meaning the hidden incarnation. What he comes to give is rarely understood. He's not come to just give Krishna consciousness. What has he come to give? He's come to give the highest rasas of Krishna consciousness. Where? In Vrindavan. And how has he given it? He's given it through this Nam Sankirtana prayer, Janti Hisu Medashaha. He's come to give it through this Nam Sankirtan. Therefore, what is this Nam Sankirtan? Goloke Premadana Harinama Sankirtana. The treasure, Golokera Premadana, the treasure of divine love in Goloka Vrindavan, Harinama Sankirtan, has descended in the form of the congregational chanting of the holy names. In other words, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is Raj Prema, according to Srila Narottam Das Thakur. When you get your beads out and you start chanting, what you are actually unwrapping, what you are actually unpackaging is the love that the residents of Vrindavan have for Krishna. Every time you touch those beads, every time you chant in Kirtan or in Japa, you are actually unpacking the eternal love that all the residents of Vrindavan have for Krishna in the most intimate area of the spiritual world. So our process is to unwrap the gift. We can only accept the gift if we accept the foundations properly. That's how the whole thing works. We accept the foundations which position us to accept the gift. And it comes down to, this is a very interesting thing. So by attention, we then develop appreciation. By appreciation, we then develop attachment. By attachment, we then develop attraction. And by attraction, we then develop affection. So the seed of love is attention. Jiva Goswami says we have to have two things, attentive chanting and attentive relationships. It all starts with attention. And I was reflecting, why? Why does it start with attention? Because actually, when I give you attention, what I'm actually showing you is that I love and respect you. Right? So you're chanting, we're chanting. What happens? Okay, so I'm chanting, I'm calling Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So when I'm chanting, I'm calling Krishna. So then he comes. Okay, what's up? What's going on? And the moment he comes, I'm looking at the television, watching TV, looking at my mobile phone. Now imagine that someone did that to you. They call you over, and the moment you turn up, they just ignore you and start doing something else. How would you feel? So this is a deep thing. This seed of attention, this seed of attention ultimately becomes the affection. It re-invokes the dormant affection that the living entity has for Krishna. And so we're very, very fortunate to have this. And the more we are attentive, the more the love will actually grow. And the opposite is also true. Api Pramadaha, Bhaktivinoda Thakur stated, the root cause of all offenses is what? Api Pramadaha. He says the root cause of all offenses is inattention. Isn't that interesting? Because if attention will lead to love, inattention will lead to offense. The one last thing I'm going to point out from this verse in purple, and this is, again, Bhagavatam 4:27, 27:9, where this verse is talking about the hundreds of suns, and we talked about how its actions and reactions which pertain to the body. The last thing I want to point out is that our success is going to come to the extent that we really take our Krishna consciousness in our own hands. I know that many of you will have heard Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj talking about not becoming a victim, right? Not allowing other people's maya to make us maya. What's the natural implication or the complete conclusion of that? The complete conclusion is that I am 108% responsible for my spiritual life. If there's anything that's not working for me in my Krishna consciousness, I have to just grab it with both hands and say, I'm not waiting for anyone. Whatever it is that's not working for me in my spiritual life, I'm going to think, what's in my circle of influence to do something about this? And if I can't do something about it externally, I'm going to do something about it internally. Yeah. Don't ever let Maya make us victims. We're not victims. In fact, to be honest, Vaishnava means all powerful. Prabhupada said that. They asked Prabhupada, if Bhakti Vinod Thakur was so powerful, why did he not spread this Krishna consciousness all over the world? Prabhupada said, Vaishnava means all powerful. He said that Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he could have spread this teaching all over the entire world by himself. But he was so kind, he left something for us to do. One of the things that I've seen Maya do in everyone's life is try to make them feel powerless. Oh, you're a victim. Oh, this person, the temple president didn't smile at you. This devotee didn't look at you very nicely. This devotee was, wasn't very helpful. But this is our field of activities. This is our battle of Kurukshetra. Every single one of us, we go through different tests, and often they're the same tests that we went through in our previous lives, but we go through those different tests because Krishna wants to see you victorious. The tests are not to make you fail. The tests are to glorify you. Krishna wants to show everyone, just look at my devotees. Just look how powerful, how amazing, how forgiving, how loving, how strong, how dynamic they are. So every time we go through a test, we should remember the test is because Krishna wants to show your quality. We're dealing with a person who loves us more than we can possibly imagine, who loves us more than we love ourselves, and who wants us to be victorious more than we want to be victorious. And who wants us to return to the spiritual world. I mean, get this. Imagine this spiritual world. In the spiritual world, no taxes. Can you believe that? No, none. No IRS, no, whatever your tax system is in your country, none. Imagine in the spiritual world, everyone looks attractive without plastic surgery. Can you believe that? There's no, you have to see a doctor, nothing. They just look good, dress well, everything. Huh? Can you imagine in the spiritual world, no one has bad breath. No one. It's just all an incredible experience. This is our home. This is our birthright. So please, every moment that we engage in some service, in some chanting, in some association, we want to be fired up and enthusiastic. You're going back home. You're achieving the very purpose of every single atom of the material creation. It's only designed for one purpose. The only purpose that every aspect of this entire creation is designed for is to get us back to the spiritual world. And the rare individuals, the extremely rare individuals, not just on this planet, but in this entire in this universe and in all the universes, the very rare individuals who've understood the entire purpose of all creation. You are among that elite group. What does Krishna say? Bahunam jamanamante gyanavam prapadyate vasudeva savam iti samahatma sudurlabha. After many lifetimes of cultivating knowledge, Krishna says, right? One comes to understand, the Gyani comes to understand, the person in knowledge comes to understand, Vasudeva Savam Iti, Krishna is everything. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha, such a great soul. I repeat, such a great soul is extremely rare. Krishna says that. I don't say it. He says it. So every single one of you on this call, extremely rare. Extremely special. What you know, who you're connected with, the potency that you carry, extremely special. We just have to unpack the gift. we'll stop there. Maybe we'll open up for some questions and comments. Any questions, any comments? Or maybe you're thinking it's breakfast time. Maybe we can end soon and have something to eat. I'm thinking the same thing. Don't worry, I understand where it's coming from.
I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
How do you know what your gift is?
Yeah. There's a few things. See, in this purple, what does Prabhupada gives the clue? Let me read this to you again. When I looked at this purple before, I thought this is full of all kinds of incredible stuff. I'll read this out to you. This is what Prabhupada says. Let's see. It's right at the top part, actually. So, yeah. Any living entity can know that he is covered by the body if he only contemplates the body a little bit. Just with a little contemplation, he can come to understand that the body is his possession. I'll tell you why I read that. I remember I was in Gitanagari, and I remember I was in the house of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and he was outside. And I was looking through the window, and what did I see him do? He's sitting on a swing. And I think many of you have seen him do that as well. He's sitting on the swing outside. And I'm thinking, what is he doing? Right? What is my spiritual master doing? Why is he sitting on the swing outside? And then for many years, I kept getting the answer. And I thought, this is incredible. It's a small thing that we don't do enough of in our movement. But I want to explain this to you because for me, this has changed my life. I can't even lie to you. This one thing has changed my life. So I saw him sitting on the swing and I could understand that he's thinking. I could understand that he's contemplating. Then I remember hearing it in many classes. What was he explaining? He said that in our ISKCON movement, we're off the biggest issue that we have in our ISKCON movement is that we're constantly putting out fires. And I started to think about it and I thought, you know what? He's not constantly putting out fires. What's he doing differently to so many other people? And I saw it's this contemplation. It's such a small thing, but it's the difference between the mode of passion and the mode of goodness. Because in the mode of passion, I act, but I don't think. In the mode of goodness, I think before I act. And so to your question, how do we know our gifts? Two things we can do. If I contemplate, so what I do for a living, I teach leaders. That's what I do for a living. And one of the things that we teach leaders is if you really want to excel in your leadership and in all areas of your life, please make time in your schedule for regular contemplation. And I'll be honest, I can literally tell the devotees who actually have regular thinking time from the devotees who don't do it. Because the ones who don't have regular thinking time, they're always dealing with emergencies. It's just one emergency, then another emergency. And you can see it's so, to be honest, it burns me, it pains me if I'm honest with you. Because they're such wonderful people. And then it's just like, they're just going through so much difficulty in their spiritual life. And I'm like, they don't understand what's going on. Because they don't put time regularly for this contemplation that Prabhupada has written about, Maya always keeps them on the back foot. You see? And what happens to those devotees? They actually think that spiritual life is a lot more difficult than it actually has to be. But it's not as difficult as they experience it to be. What they're doing is they're leading their Krishna consciousness in the mode of passion. So Maya just throws one thing after another thing. Spend all your time worrying about this. Now deal with that particular issue. Now deal with this emergency. Now deal with that emergency. And the opposite to your question is, if instead, that's why I loved your question, by the way, if instead I have regular time to contemplate, then rather than reacting, rather than being reactive, I become proactive. So now it's like, okay, I want to be in this Krishna consciousness. I want to be successful in my Krishna consciousness. Okay, so how am I doing in my Krishna consciousness now? So like the exercise we did, what's going well? Okay, these are going well. These are my gifts. Let me deploy them. Where am I struggling? Or where am I weak? You know what? I'm weak in this area, this area, this area. So rather than waiting for Maya to slap the taste out of my mouth, instead, I'm going to plan how I can deal with those weaknesses before the test comes. Now, back to your question, what this means in summary, I can understand my gifts in two ways. I can understand my gifts by contemplation. What do I do well? If I just ask myself the question, same principle that Prabhupada is giving here, I can understand things just by contemplation. Now, there's another thing which is also very interesting. In this purport, Prabhupada says also, and this is deep. So I'll read it again. Any living entity can know that he is covered by the body if he only contemplates the body a little bit. Just with a little contemplation, he can come to understand that the body is his possession. Then Prabhupada says something else. This is another great point. One can understand this by practical experience and by the authority of the Shastra. So that means contemplation is one way that we can understand something. We can understand something by our experience, and we can understand something by the Shastra. Have you heard this before? This is from Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada is saying this. This is from Jiva Goswami. I can understand something by the Shastra, Shabda. I can understand this by contemplation, that's inference, Anuman. I can understand something by practical experience, that's Pratyaksha. Jiva Goswami gives 10 praman, 10 evidence, 10 types of evidence that can be used. And Prabhupada in this purport, he's just given the top 3 that Vaishnavas use. Shabda, the statements of the Shastra, Anuman, which means contemplation of the Shastra, so inference. So I think if the Shastra says this, what does that imply? For example, if the Shastra says that devotees that this is how that in the mode of passion one is constantly dealing with emergencies, what does that imply? It implies that that Vaishnava who I see who's constantly having to deal with one emergency after another, he must be dealing with the mode of passion. Oh, that's why it's so difficult for him. Anuman. And by pratyaksha, by personal experience. I will add one other thing, and we did this with some devotees in Switzerland. I would dearly encourage you, and I'm sure many of you do this already, and I love this. I would dearly encourage you, go to devotees who know you. Ask them, where do you think I'm strong? What do you think I'm good at? And where do you think I could focus to improve? My spiritual teacher said that if we sincerely ask this question to devotees, he said that Krishna will often use the devotees who we ask this question to in order to give us the answers that Krishna wants to give. Now think about that. Where have we heard this before? Tadvidi Priti Lakshanam. This is one of those 6 loving exchanges, isn't it? You reveal the mind and you inquire confidentially. When I'm asking you for feedback, where do you think I'm strong? Where can I improve? I'm inquiring confidentially from you. So in other words, when we ask that question, we're invoking the mercy of Rupa Goswami, as this is an instruction that Rupa Goswami has given in this Upadeshamrita, which is a nectar of instruction. We're getting the blessings and the empowerment of Rupa Goswami, who in the spiritual world is an intimate associate of Srimati Radharani. In the spiritual world, who is Rupa Goswami? He's Rupa Manjari, one of the most intimate Manjari associates of Srimati Radharani herself. So when he says you do this, and you do this, you're immediately invoking the mercy of the most powerful residents of the spiritual world. So to answer your question, that's how we can do it. We can contemplate, we can look at ourselves through the lens of the Shastra, we can get feedback from the devotees as well. That's how we understand our talents, and we can pay attention to our practical experience. You do something and the devotees are like, wow, that's incredible. I love the way you led the class. I love the way you led the kirtan. I love the way you did the service. And we can understand, oh, that could be something that I'm good at. I always like to make this practical. I want to encourage you. The 2 exercises so far. Number 1, write down where you think you're strong. Write down where you think you're weak. And think, the last point, with the weaknesses, what can I do about it? That's exercise number 1. Exercise number 2, I see Rasheshwara Madhava on the call. Rasheshwara Madhava, we do this. And Rasheshwara Madhava, I tell you, he gave me some incredible feedback. It was a game changer. He gave me some incredible, and I thought, I'll be honest, when I heard it, I thought, this is Krishna speaking to me through Rasheshwara, you know? So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to learn from all of you, and you can give me feedback. Bhuta-Bhavana, I think you're strong in this area. Bhuta-Bhavana, I think this is something that you could focus on. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free. Most of you have my WhatsApp number. If you don't get it from someone, I'm open. Because if we want to grow, then we should know that the gifts, the secrets, Krishna loves us. We're dealing with someone who loves us. He's ready to speak to us through all the devotees. I'm going to come to Mother Rajalila in a second. I just want to really hammer this point. Krishna loves us. So what you're going to hear if you inquire sincerely from the devotees are the exact things that are going to change our spiritual life and take it to the next level. Thank you very much. Mother Rajalila. Actually, no, sorry. Did you have a comment to make, Sarvatma, before Mother Rajalila? Did you want to respond to that?
I just wanted just a little bit of a follow-up.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can elucidate this. You say you train leaders. That's what you do.
Yeah, for a living.
Yes, but when you talk to devotees, not every devotee is a leader.
Yes, that's true.
And also not every devotee is contemplative. That there's something that you have to practice in order to get good at, or you could be a natural. So how do you fix that? Do we need everybody to be a leader? And does everybody needs to contemplate at a certain point? And how do you go about it if it's not your habit, it's not your makeup?
Okay, thank you for a brilliant question, and then we'll come to Mother Rajalila. There's a few things to note. First of all, as you said, some people are a natural because they're from previous lives. So that's one way that people can be more contemplative, is that they have it as a natural habit. Some people, we get it from association. So I may not be naturally contemplative, but my spiritual master is. So by associating with him and seeing the benefit that he gets from doing it, I start to take it on. Not because I understand how important it is, but because I start to see the people who do that, they get a huge benefit. And I want that benefit. So now I'm going to think, why are they so successful? And they're more successful than me. What are they doing differently to what I'm doing? One of the things that they do differently to me is that they're more contemplative, and that's helping them to be more successful. Okay, so then I'm going to be more contemplative because I want to be as successful as they are. So we can get it by it being a natural tendency. We can get it by association. We can also, all devotees will get it actually, because as we progress in spiritual life, our spiritual life goes from the mode of devotional service in ignorance through to devotional service in passion, through to devotional service in goodness. When devotional service is predominantly in the mode of goodness, one of the qualities of devotional service in the mode of goodness is that one tends to be contemplative. They think about their service, they think about what's going on, they think about what's happening now, what's happening in the future. The other thing I want to point out, yes, everyone is not a leader in the sense that everyone wants to take on a position of authority, but everyone is a leader in the sense that everyone is responsible for their own life. As Prabhupada says, we have to fly our own plane. So irrespective of whether we're leaders on a societal level or on a family level, right? Leader of your family, or on an individual level, regardless, we all have some leadership influence because we're all engaging in activities that also create certain patterns and trends that others have to deal with. So to answer your question, we can become contemplative because we see its value, because we have association where we see its value, because we become purified and are engaging in devotional service in the mode of goodness. It can also be there from our past life. But these are all different ways in which we can understand the value of that. But even if it's just through purification, if devotees come to devotional service in higher modes, they tend to become contemplative because it's a symptom of the mode of goodness. I hope that answers your question, Prabhu.
Yeah, and then some. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Mother Rajalila still there? Maybe she had to go. Okay, maybe she had to leave. Does anyone else have any question or comments? Okay, so I really want to encourage you in this. Again, I'm not telling you this theoretically. I do this. In fact, when we teach leaders, there's studies on this. They've done studies on people who are very, very successful in leadership. And what they looked at, what were the specific behaviors of those people who were more successful? And what they found is that those who had regular thinking time, because what it does is it gives you an early, so when you have regular thinking time, it allows you to connect more with Krishna in the heart. What does Bhagavad Gita say? Paramatma samahita. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, the one whose mind is controlled, the super soul is already reached. Let's be honest, and I'm going to ask you for a show of hands. How many of you have experienced this, right? You were doing something, you were involved in some service, or just even something in your life, and you had an inner sense. You had an inner sense that, oh, this needs a bit more attention, but or I've got a sense that maybe something's going wrong here, or maybe someone's doing something wrong, whatever it is, and we ignored it. We ignored that sense, and we thought, oh no, I'm just too busy. Because we were so busy, because we were so distracted, something came up in the heart. Krishna gave us a heads up. Look, maybe don't forget this, or watch out for this, or this person, be careful about this person. And we ignored it. We ignored what the super soul was telling us. And then it became a big issue later on. Be honest, I'd like a show of hands. How many of you have ever experienced that in your spiritual life? Just raise your hand, electronically or otherwise. Yeah, I can see the hands coming up. I've experienced that so many times. And it's like, dude, I was thinking, damn, why didn't I listen to the super soul of my heart? And that's what Krishna does. He's our early warning system. Now, let's link that to what I said before. If we have regular time to think, what you'll start doing is you'll think about your spiritual life and think, yeah, where am I in my spiritual journey? Okay, I'm here, that's good. So what does that imply? Oh, it implies that I need to prepare for this, because Krishna will give you a heads up. Okay, you're at this point in your journey, the next stage will be here. So start preparing now, where you are now, start preparing for where you're going to be. When we have regular time to reflect on our devotional service and on our spiritual life, by that reflection, we will not only understand where we are, we will understand where we have to go. And when we understand where we have to go, we will start preparing in the present to make the future even more auspicious. You see, that's the gift of this type of regular contemplation. So yes, we should serve, we should be active. Yes, absolutely. But we should also have that contemplative time. There was an interview. It was a previous prime minister in the UK. And he was sharing how before he became prime minister, this is many years ago, he went to the White House and he went to speak to Bill Clinton. And, before he left the meeting, Bill Clinton said to him, he said, I want to talk to you about something really important. And this minister was saying, I thought, whoa, this is really, he said, what is it? And so I was really taken aback. I thought, maybe he's going to tell me that he's going to give me some piece of amazing geopolitical insight. He said, I thought he was going to tell me that there's a secret code that runs the world. And then Bill Clinton said to him, he said, I want to talk to you about scheduling. And he said, well, scheduling? He said, scheduling. And then Bill Clinton said to him, he said, yes, scheduling. He said, you will find that when you become a leader, when you take on a position of responsibility, one of the most difficult things that you will encounter is finding time to think strategically. And he said, if you don't do this, then what will happen is the system will take you over. When we say this, when he said the system, we take it to mean Maya, will take you over. And what happens is you'll be busy in meetings and activities from morning through to evening, right? She'll keep you busy all times. She said, but what will be very interesting is that you will be constantly putting out fires. And what will happen is the very things that you knew that you had to do in order to make significant advancement, you won't get to those activities, because you'll be constantly dealing with one urgent issue after another. And then what will happen is, at the end of your life, right? At the end of your life, what will happen is you will find that all that's happened, by the way, Sarvatma, I think you're pinned on this, everyone can see you rather than me. You just may want to do something on that. But
I'm not the host, so that
okay.
has to be fixed by Agari Prabhu, I believe.
Okay, Agari, maybe you can help. Thank you. But yeah, so what will happen is when people look back, and when you look back on your own life, you will find that you were just dealing with all these emergencies and the major game-changing activities, the major milestones that would have made significant contribution and difference. You weren't able to focus on that, and you were tricked by Maya. And you were incredibly busy, incredibly active, you were doing incredible things, but the key things, and I'll just add to that. I thought about this very deeply, and I saw that in our movement, what can happen is that some of the emergencies that we're dealing with, if we actually had a bit more thought, we would have seen the emergency happen before it happened, and we would have put something in that place so that the emergency never occurred. And I'll give you an example. I'll be very transparent with you. I engage in so many devotional projects, and there's so many people, oh yes, let's do this, let's do that. But because I try and take some time to think, when I engage in devotional projects, I look at 3 things before I get even close to it. I look at character, competence, capacity. And I want to talk you through, this is like a real example. And don't think, oh, this is idealistic. I'll be honest, I've saved myself so much pain, suffering, time, and energy by having this contemplative approach. Character. I don't get involved in projects with people who've got bad character. And I'll tell you why. Because I know that if I get involved with projects with people who have bad character, what happens is, because of bad character, they play politics. And then instead of using all my time and energy to get something done, and I'll be honest, I'm about getting stuff done, right? Talk is cheap. I want to get stuff done. I want to get something done. But because I've been careful about character, I'm not wasting my time dealing with politics, right? And you know, many of you as leaders, someone comes to you, so-and-so did this, so-and-so did that, and then you're wasting an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours having to deal with this. You know, now this person's complaining about this person is threatening to leave because this person spoke to them that way. I ain't got time for it, dude. I have no time for it. So the first thing I'm looking at is character. If you don't have good character, I'm not working with you, because I'm not spending my hours, my precious time having to deal with issues because you just can't behave properly because you're a child. No way. So first one is character. 2 is competence. There's this kind of ridiculous idea that everyone can do everything. No, you can do some things if it's an emergency, but for day to day, you have to have a certain competence, right? You know, I want you to look after my tax return, but you don't know how to count. You don't know how to do addition, subtraction. You're no good with maths. It's not going to work, right? So you're going to do the tax return wrong. Then then the IRS are going to come after me. I'm going to come to you and say, why didn't you do it properly? You're going to say, well, you know, I'm a very sincere devotee. I chant nice rounds, so it was okay. I thought I could do it. I'm going to like, are you crazy? Have you lost your mind? If you don't know maths, don't do the tax returns, right? So the second one is competence. You're laughing, but look at our movement. Look how many times devotees get involved in, and you can see they've not done any thinking. There's absolutely no thought behind the activity. And therefore, something that will take 1 hour is now taking 10 hours. So in the name of just doing the needful, you've made a 1 hour activity into something that's 10 hours. Not only is it taking 10 hours, but now it's taking all your energy, and because it wasn't thought through, you're losing enthusiasm because it's just taking so much more energy and effort to do it. You see? So the first one I look at is character. Second thing I look at is competence. And the third one I look at is capacity. We all know this. You've given someone some service to do, and they were very enthusiastic. Yeah, I'd love to do it. I'd love to help. And then after 1 week, is the service done? No, it's not done. 2 weeks, did you get a chance to do it? No, it's not done. 3 weeks, has anything happened with the service? It's not done. A month, dude, what's going on? You told me you'd get it to me in 2 days. It's been a month. I've been chasing you 5 or 6 times. What's happened to the service? Oh, Prabhu, I really wanted to help, but I just didn't have time. Why didn't you tell me that from the beginning? I would have given it to someone else a month ago. You understand? So character, competence, capacity. You'll see, unfortunately, there are so many devotees who sometimes as devotees, our feet are not on the ground. So therefore, what that means is sometimes devotees are impractical and unrealistic. They will take on something that you know they could never, they don't have time to do this. So I'm giving you a service, I know it takes 7 hours. You've told me you're going to get it done. You don't have 7 hours, so you're not going to get it done. And then I'm going to chase you 5 or 6 times, and you're going to elude me because you feel bad about the fact that you haven't got the service done. It's taken 7 hours. You don't have 7 hours. And then I feel bad because I have to give the service to someone else because you didn't have 7 hours to do this service in the first place. But really, if we'd have thought about it, we'd have sat down and have a conversation. I would have assessed your character's good. Okay, we're not going to waste time in politics. Your competence is good. You can actually do the service I'm asking you to do. Oh, but you don't have time. Okay, so let me give you something that you actually have time for, or let me give you a part of it that you can do with the time that you actually have. That way it's realistic. So again, this is how it works. If you take a little bit of time to be thoughtful in your devotional service, oh my God, I can't lie to you. You will get everything in spiritual life becomes easier, because that's a symptom of devotional service in the mode of goodness. What does Krishna tell Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita? Activities in the mode of goodness, happiness in the mode of goodness, it begins like poison and ends like nectar. That's what Krishna says. In other words, you put a little bit more effort in up front, but don't think, oh, it's idealistic. No, you save yourself a lot more time in the long term, and you save yourself a lot more emotional pain and a lot more disturbance in the long term. Very, very easy. In other words, you pay now and you enjoy later. Whereas in the mode of passion, you buy now, but you're going to pay a bigger price later on because you didn't think through what you were going to do. So that's how it works practically. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Going once. Going twice.
Jai Hare Krishna Bhuta-Bhavana Prabhu, this is Chintamani. Please accept my humble obeisance.
My dear Mother Chintamani, it's always a real pleasure to hear your voice. I feel blessed already. Thank you for joining the call.
Krishna is so kind. I just want to say briefly that I so appreciate all your points. I appreciate your spiritual insight and then your focus on practicality. So we can always leave your classes with some practical action and some inspiration. And I'm particularly leaving the class with the reminder that when I approach chanting the holy name, it's a gift for me to open, appreciate the contents, and know that we're directly connecting with the love that the residents of Vrindavan have for Krishna. So thank you so much for how much you give your time all over the world, and representing our spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada so wonderfully. So thank you for this inspiring class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for your kind words and your encouragement. I'm coming to Gitanagari. There's a youth retreat in Gitanagari, end of July, early August. So I'm hoping when I come there, I'll be able to see all of you guys, because you're all doing amazing service in Gitanagari. And you've actually inspired me to share one other point on this point about attentive chanting and attentive service and attentive association, because it really struck me a few days ago. And I'll just share this, and I think you'll really understand this analogy. So people eat, every one of us eat food, right? So we honor prasadam. But there's a secret. When someone honors prasadam and they really chew the food properly and they really meditate on the taste, then what happens is, according to Ayurveda, if you chew the food properly, you're more likely to draw all the nutrients, all the vitamins, all the good stuff from your food, right? Because you're digesting it properly. A lot of devotees, we don't understand that the same rule applies to spiritual life, and especially the chanting. If I chant and I pay attention, what I'm actually doing is I'm drawing all the rich nutrients from the holy name. I get all the full nourishment. The soul gets fully nourished, stimulated, and strengthened when we chant attentively, because it's like chewing properly on the food. It's the same principle. I'm attentively relishing all the nourishment from the holy name. But many devotees, we chant the holy name, but it's like chewing the food badly. It's like you throw something into your mouth, you just chew it once or twice and just swallow. You're not even aware of the taste of the food. We're not aware of the texture. We're not breaking it down properly. And then we don't understand why we don't feel satisfied after the meal. Yeah, because you didn't digest the meal properly. So the holy name has infinite capacity to give us all this deep spiritual strength and nourishment, but you have to do it. You have to actually chew it properly. You have to relish it. You have to draw all the nourishment by the attentive practice. So it's not how many hours you spend chanting or serving or associating. It's how you relish it, how you draw all that strength from it. You see? So you will see that some devotees, they've been around for decades. They've been around for decades, and even they don't understand. I've been around for decades. How come I don't feel stronger, more nourished? It's not the number of years you've been around. Forget that. It's nothing to do with it. It's the quality within those years. It's just like you go to university to study, right? You go to some famous university, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Oxford, Cambridge. Just because you went there for 3 or 4 years, does it make you a scholar? No, of course not. You went to Harvard, but what you did is you just messed around, you played around, you didn't attend any of the classes, you didn't listen to the lectures, or you were in the lectures. You were in the class, but while the teacher was speaking, while the lecturer was speaking, you're playing on your phone, you're texting your friends, you're watching YouTube videos. Okay, after 3 or 4 years of university at Harvard, are you really a scholar? Hell no, hell no. Because you were in the class, but you weren't paying attention. And devotional service is the same. We can be around in Krishna consciousness for many years. If we don't pay attention, then it's the attention within the time that actually determines the quality and the progress. That's my point. Okay. Thank you, Mother Chintamani. I saw Devaki Priti, you have your hand up. Did you want to make a comment? Please enlighten us.
Thank you so much for your class. Super grateful to hear from you. And I had one question. How do we balance remaining enthusiastic, but also trying to improve and understanding our weaknesses? How can we have both of those at the same time?
I would say that we don't try and balance both of them. We should feel that if I can work on my weaknesses, I'll be even more powerful. I'll be even more strong. I'll be even more able to carry Krishna's mercy. I'll be even more enthusiastic because, I know Maya, you're going to attack me from this side, but I've got the armor on already. So feel free, attack me. I already thought about that. I've already put the armor on. As they say, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, right? I know you can attack me there. Krishna gave me the heads up. I put the armor on. I dealt with that. So yeah, and then when she attacked, she's like, yeah, I knew that was coming. Don't worry. I already sorted that out. Just keep on moving. It makes you even more dynamic. You can even do this as an exercise with your friends. You can actually talk to your friends and you can help each other to understand. You know your friends. You've seen certain things about your friends. You can probably tell your friends when Maya's going to attack them. Isn't that incredible? When we're around each other so much, if we're honest and open and we have those relationships, one devotee can tell the other devotee, I have to know this, that your sadhana isn't good. That's when Maya's going to attack you. And the other devotee can tell the other devotee, I've noticed that you don't study Prabhupada's books. So therefore, you're a wonderful person, but you're a bit sentimental. Maya's going to attack you in terms of the teachings. Because you're going to hear or read something that's going to disturb you because you don't actually try to study. And where you have doubts, you don't go to someone who can clear your doubts. I'll tell you something that happened, right? I was one morning, I was going to Bhaktivedanta Manor. So it's a temple in the UK. I was going on public transport. I had my bead bags in my hand. I was on public transport. I was doing some chanting. I was sitting opposite two women, and they were looking at me, right? Just give me a strange look. I didn't think anything of it because maybe this just because they're seeing me as a devotee, they think it's unusual. Right. Get this. That was in the morning. In the evening, same day, it was a Sunday. I remember it very clearly. I'm on my way back from Bhaktivedanta Manor, again on public transport. I go on my journey on the underground. No, I didn't see them. I'm at the bus. This was Krishna's arrangement. I'm at the bus stop. I'm waiting for the bus to go home. I see the same two women again. Get this. I see the same two women again. And this time they come up to me, right? So one of them said to me, what are you doing? I said, I'm chanting Hare Krishna, right? And they said, do you believe in Jesus, right? I said, yeah, Jesus is also a great devotee, a great servant of God, etc. And then this is how deep it gets, right? So then one of them, she says to her friend, you won't be able to, because he's chanting the mantra, you won't be able to talk to him. That's what she said to her friend. And the girl who said that, She used to be a devotee, right? So then she explained how she used to be a Hare Krishna devotee, and she used to live in a temple, in an ashram, and she had a spiritual master, and she used to personally serve her guru. And and then now this is the point I really want you to get. This is what I mean by being sentimental. She was a devotee, and she said that she said later on when she read the Bible, she realized that the Hindus had taken stuff out of the Bible and put that into the Bhagavad Gita. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? She must have been reading these books with her eyes closed. I've read the Bible. If you read the Bible and you read the Bhagavad Gita, there's no way in hell that you can come to the conclusion that the Hindus have taken stuff from the Bible and put in the Bhagavad Gita. I knew immediately she was sentimental. And because she was sentimental, Maya got to her by giving her such a ridiculous idea, which caused her to leave Krishna consciousness. And we should not think that it can't happen to us. You see? Don't think it can't happen to you. What does Prabhupada say? Religion without philosophy is sentimentality. Philosophy without religion is mental speculation or fanaticism. It's all there. Yeah? So we can tell each other where we are weak and where we are strong because you pick it up in association. Yeah? And Krishna loves us. He doesn't want us to get hit by Maya. So we should pay attention to these things. Thank you very much. Does that answer your question, Devaki Priti? Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you for such an intelligent, thoughtful question. I'm going to go over to your father, Jagannath Pandit, Prabhu, for any of his corrections, comments.
Okay. Definitely no corrections, but gratitude and appreciation for your class. As always, a lot of support and reminders. One of the things that really stuck out for me is at the root of all offenses is inattention, and how that inattention applies in so many other of our services, our Sangha, and so on. And that without that, in all our endeavors, it's like the most critical thing for our progress.
Yes.
Because Krishna is sending signals all the time. And if we're attentive, then we'll notice those.
Yes.
So
that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. It's a great point.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to affirm that. And I look forward to, I see this as a precursor to when you come for the retreat. I look forward to that.
I can't wait to see all of you. I'm just counting the days to July, end of July, early August. I'll be there with all of you in person. But I love what you said, Jagannath Pandit, because it's reminded me. So when you were speaking about this point about inattention, it reminded me of something. See, because there's two ways to look at this. One is we can be on the down and think, I struggle to be attentive in my chanting. But actually, I found that the better way to look at it is to think, what can I do? How can I chant? And how can I serve in a way that I'm naturally inspired to pay attention? For example, when you're doing something that you enjoy, you pay attention to it. So the trick is, and I really want to encourage you all in this, try to think of how to do your spiritual life in a way that inspires you, right? Rather than just a negative, rather than just be like, I've got to stop being inattentive. Try to think, how can I do my spiritual life in a way that I'm inspired to be attentive? To be infused, right? So I've got to make sure I don't become disinfused. No, that's a negative. Think about the positive. How can I do my spiritual life in a way that keeps me enthusiastic? I've got to remember to avoid bad association. No. Think about it. How can I do my spiritual life in a way that I get as much good association as possible? So always look for the positive. Always think, how can I do the positive aspect? And that will keep the fire going in our spiritual life. Okay, I'm going to go to Mother Achyuta. Wonderful to see you as well. I feel a blessing because you're here. How can I serve you, Mother Achyuta? How are you?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I am well. I'm always so enthused by hearing your classes and having your association. Thank you so much for such a wonderful practical class.
I'm infused by seeing you, and you look amazing.
Oh, thank you. Hare Krishna. I've been trying to focus like that on, how to be more enthusiastic in my, Krishna consciousness. And so I'm going to be going to the Holy Name Festival that's coming up this week. So I'm really excited about that, and having Sachinandana Maharaj's association and his focus on the Holy Name. And today, really, I want to just jump in an Uber and jump on the train and go to New York to Rath Yatra, but I'm like, COVID. So it's so hard in this, time because we have to think about moving safely and carefully. But all morning, I'm like, you should go, because that's going to enthuse you in your Krishna consciousness. But I wanted to ask a question about this suggestion that you made that Gurudev, of course, instruction gave to us many years ago about getting feedback from one another about what we can work on. And actually, that's one of his instructions that I never have followed. And so I have to ask myself, I remember initially when he gave that instruction, I felt fearful. And I still feel fearful about following that instruction, because I feel like maybe I can't handle the feedback that I would get, even though I know it would come from a place of love from the people that I would ask, because, that's what I get and that's what is available. But I know it's my false ego that, allows that for fear to perpetuate. So how can we, because others might be feeling that, kind of get past that, get over our false ego and past our fear to be able to follow that instruction and benefit from what could come out of it?
It's a great question. Thank you for that question. And it definitely applies to me too. There's two things in my heart that I really want to share with you. And it's actually, first of all, from the earlier point you made about New York Rath Yatra. If I was in America, I would be in the Rath Yatra in a heartbeat. One of my friends has gone to he's flown from London to New York. And if I could get that time off work, I'd love to be there. I just can't. I've never been to New York Rath Yatra, but it just looks so amazing. Anyway, so there's two things I wanted to say. First of all, and this is an aside, in terms of COVID and just the issues of the world in general and so on, I want to encourage all of us, take care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, as well as spiritually. There are certain things you can do Ayurvedically, in terms of Ayurvedic herbs and foods and so on. There's certain things you can do in terms of yoga. There's certain things you can do in terms of pranayama. My dad's 80 plus, right? Over 80 years in age. He told me, and I still don't understand how he did it. Maybe from a previous life, because he's a typical African male. And he told me that when he was 35, he started doing alternate nostril breathing. I said, Dad, what, you? Alternate nostril breathing? Where did you get this from? He just spontaneously started doing alternate nostril breathing. And the research, when you do things like that over a long period of time, it has a huge effect on your health, effect on your immune system, all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing. Second point, when Mother Achyuta, you were speaking, you reminded me of something that came a while ago, and I was discussing this with a few devotees. In order to make it back to God, we have to make sacrifice, So don't wait for the right association, don't wait for the festivals, go looking for them. Like Mother Achyuta's doing, right? She's going to the Holy Name Festival. What Maya tries to do in the life of a devotee is say, look, there's nothing coming up here, so it's not your fault that you're not infused. No, what Krishna's thing is, be prepared to make a sacrifice. Go looking for the things that will infuse you. Go looking for the festivals, Rath Yatras, associations, books, and be prepared to pay a price for that. You see? Like Mother Achyuta, you're going to pay a price. You're going to have to travel a certain distance. I think Satyanarayana Maharaj is doing the Holy Name Retreat in New Vrindavan, if I'm correct, So that's a distance from Gitanagari. But Krishna, he does not like to be taken cheaply. So any devotee who thinks that all the enthusiasm and the inspiration should just fall upon my lap, you're in for a shock. Because what Maya will do is make sure that never falls in your lap. But what Krishna wants to see is you take him seriously. Just like we don't like to be taken for granted, right? If someone takes you cheaply, Achyuta, she needs to do, I want to spend time with Achyuta, but I'm not going to spend time with her. I'm going to wait till she comes to where I am. I'm never going to go and see Achyuta, right? She has to come and see me. And if she doesn't come and see me, I'll say that Achyuta's in Maya, there's something wrong with Achyuta. No. If we're serious about developing a relationship with Krishna, we should chase after him. And we should be prepared to make sacrifices, pay prices, whether it's price in terms of time, energy, inconvenience, inconvenience ourselves to get Krishna. It's important, but we will always get more than we've given. So don't worry about that. Now to your question, right? So Mother Achyuta, when you shared your question, what came very strongly in my heart is that I should challenge you. Because I think that what you said is true, but not quite true. What I mean by that is how you asked, how can we deal with this fact that we may feel fear about whether we can handle the feedback? What came strongly in my heart is that that's the wrong question. The question I should ask you is, what do you need to put in place for yourself so that when you get that feedback, you can handle it? You see? The question that we have to ask ourselves is, okay, I may get feedback about things I can improve on. What do I need to put in place so that I can handle that feedback? So maybe it's, okay, give the feedback to a friend of mine and they can say it in a way that I can handle, right? Or maybe it's, I get the feedback and I'm going to discuss it with a friend, so they're going to give me the support and they're going to encourage me and support me in making the changes that I know I need to make, right? It may be that I get the feedback at a time where I feel strong and ready to and open to it, right? Let's say that, I've had a long day at work and it's been really intense and I feel a bit irritable. Maybe that's not the time to get the feedback, right? So it's also about the timing. Maybe, so whatever it is. Another thing, this is another thing we teach managers, because we teach managers, leaders, about how to give and receive feedback, right? How to get feedback, how to give feedback. One of the secrets about healthy feedback is how you ask for it, because you don't even have to ask for feedback. Another way you can ask is that, so some people are reluctant to give feedback, but if you ask for advice, it's the same thing, but the wording is different, so it feels different. So even asking, where do you see an opportunity? Where do you see opportunities for me to improve? So asking for where are my weaknesses, it may sound negative, but if you say, where do you see the opportunities for me to improve? Very, very different kind of question, but you're still getting at the same essence, or, what would you like to see me do more of or less of? So what you can understand, the things that they want you to do less of, it may be the things which they feel are not really useful or may not be so good. And the things they want to see you do more of, that can indicate the things that they feel that you really have an opportunity to leverage because they're strengths. So there's so many ways in which you can ask the question. You can also ask for anonymous feedback to be given to someone else. So let's say a tutor and Mother Chintamani decide to work together. So Mother Chintamani goes out to the devotees and says, a tutor has asked me to ask all of you for feedback on what she does well and where she can improve. And then what Mother Chintamani, and we do this at work, right? Leaders do this. They'll have someone who will go out to all of the relevant people and say, this leader wants honest feedback. And he's deputized this person to collect the feedback. And that way, people are more likely to be very honest, right? So they'll say, you know what? I like this leader. He or she is good at this, and this. Where we think that they can improve is A, B, and C. Now, because Chintamani's got the feedback, she will then express it and present it to a tutor in a way that a tutor can handle. Because Chintamani and the tutor are friends, and so she knows, all right, I know how to say it to my friend, but I know how to express it. Even though they may have said something in a bit of a blunt way, I'm not going to express it to a tutor in a blunt way. I'm going to express it to a tutor in a way that she can accept it. So I'll say it in a way that she gets the essence, but in a way that's also encouraging, that's also inspiring, so that she can work on that. So that's another thing you can do. There's so many things you can do. But do you get where I'm coming from, Mother Achyuta?
I do. Thank you so much. Yeah, actually, as you were sharing that, I kind of vaguely maybe remember sending out some years ago, like an email asking, my cowardly way of doing it. But I don't remember the feedback, so it must be time to do it again. So thank you for those suggestions.
Thank you. And again, I all of you have my number. I'm open to that. Feedback on what you think I do well. Feedback, Bhuta-Bhavana, I think there's an opportunity for you to do more of this, or I think you'd advance if you do less of this and more of this. I'm open. You have my number. Feel free to send me messages on WhatsApp. I'm open completely. And if you don't want to send it to me directly, you can send it to me through another person. So you can give feedback to another person, and that person says to me, Bhuta-Bhavana, some devotees gave me this feedback to give to you. This is one more technique we teach leaders, right? So because people are reluctant to tell their authorities the truth, one technique that we teach leaders, we will tell them, when you reach out to, when you have a one-to-one discussion with a member of your staff, what you can say to them is, okay, so let's say that I'm working as a leader and Mother Yashoda Mai is a member of the team, okay? So I'll, as Yashoda Mai's manager, I'll go to Yashoda Mai and say, Yashoda Mai, how do you feel the rest of the team felt about the way that I am leading? Or how do you feel the rest of the team feel about the way that I presented last week? And so Mother Yashoda Mai may say to me, Bhuta-Bhavana, you know, I think your leadership's fine. I think the rest of the team felt that you spoke a bit too much. Now, actually, in reality, it's Mother Yashoda Mai who thinks I speak too much. But because I'm asking, what do the rest of the team feel? She can say what she thinks, but she can pitch it indirectly, right? So there's no question of any kind of tension between me and her. So, you know, so let's say I'm Bhuta-Bhavana and Mother Yashoda Mai works for me and say, how do the rest of the team feel about the way I gave the presentation? And she's like, you know what? I thought your presentation was fine, but I think the rest of the team felt that you were talking too much. You know, you were talking about yourself too much, Bhuta-Bhavana. You know, I mean, I don't mind, but I mean, this is just what I think the rest of the team felt. But actually, that's what she feels. But we've made it so it's non-confrontational. And that encourages her to say what she really thinks or feels. And then I can actually learn and understand and adjust accordingly. So there's different techniques. I'm going to go to Jiva Pandit, then I'm going to go to Queenie. Jiva. Do you like to?
Prabhu, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, Jiva Pandit, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for your class. Very insightful. I really like the point that you made about the seed of love being attention. And I also really like the point that you made about making time to be contemplative. So in regards to this, making time to be contemplative, I was wondering, how can we tell the difference between our intuition actually being a message from the super soul versus it just being a message from our mind and our intelligence?
Great question. That's come up a few times over the years, and I've heard different gurus answer the question in different ways. But you should ultimately, there's a few things. First of all, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 19, text number 12, in the purple, Prabhupada says all major decisions should be confirmed by some authority. He says this makes the matter perfect. So for example, with major decisions, there's no harm in bouncing it off other people because you always get the rich benefit of their insight. And I'll explain how this works. If you do a careful study, you will find that many of the things which are in our scriptures are also there in different areas of secular life. At work, one technique that many leaders are using, they call it red teaming, okay? So this is from the military. What they would do in the military is one team would come up with a strategy, okay? So they would think about, okay, we're in war, we're gonna create this military strategy. Once they created the strategy, that team would give their strategy to another group of the military, right? Their same team members, just another group in their same army. And then they would say to that team, okay, we've written a strategy. Your team's job is to look at our strategy and tell us all the weaknesses in our strategy. And by seeing all the weaknesses in the strategy, then they would get that feedback and they would fix their strategy to make it even stronger because the other group would see the gaps that they've missed. That's the first example. Second example, the Vedic kings would do the same thing. So it's a Shastric example. The Vedic kings, when the king would decide something, he would then give his decision to the ministers and tell his ministers, look at my decision and tell me if there's anything that I've missed. So he would have an even more powerful strategy forward. So that's the second example. The third example is Prabhupada. If you read Lilamrita, there are many instances where Prabhupada was deciding to do something, and then he would speak to his disciples and get their feedback on his strategy to see if there's any angle that he's not considered. You see? So the first point to your question, Jiva Pandit, is that for major decisions, we don't want to be dependent where we can't think for ourselves. We don't want to be independent where we make our own decisions, major decisions, and we don't get input even though there's all this collective intelligence from all the Vaishnavas that we could use to our advantage. So we don't want to be overly dependent. We don't want to be independent, but we're looking for healthy interdependence. What that means is I'm contemplating for myself, and it's based upon Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. But then I also check in with the other devotees because there's something that I may have missed. There's an angle that they may have had. There's a realization that they may have that can help me. So why would you not take advantage of the huge collective intelligence, realization, clarity, Shastric knowledge, experience of all these Vaishnavas and just do something based upon your limited understanding when they're all available to help you? It doesn't make sense. And that's why we reveal the mind in confidence, and that's why we inquire confidentially. So the key point also is that sometimes we may not know if it's coming from the mind or from the super soul. But if it's good advice, this is something that Shiv Ramaraj said. It's a class he gave at Bhaktivedanta Manor. He said, if it's good advice, ultimately it's coming from Krishna. If it's actually good advice, you see? And again, the test is it in line with Guru, Sadhu, Shastra? That's the first key test. And then we also bounce it off other devotees. And if you're interested in this, I studied this actually. There's a great seminar, and I've used this in my own life. There's a great seminar called The Higher Connection, How to Contact the Super Soul by Satyananda Maharaj. And he gives loads of scriptural references, how you can determine if the advice or guidance you're getting is coming from the super soul. So I'll give an example in my own life. In 2004, I was speaking to, as I was just doing my devotional service, different devotees all independently told me, Bhuta-Bhavana, you should spend some time serving your spiritual master. Now, there was going to be a youth retreat with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, Radhanath Maharaj, and Jadwaita Maharaj in New Vrindavan. And that was in summer 2004. I didn't have much money, and therefore I wasn't planning to go to the retreat. I knew that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was scheduled to visit the UK after the youth retreat. So I thought, I'm just going to wait for him to come here. But I was trying to serve sincerely, praying, and so on. And as I was doing it, I maybe 6, 7 or more devotees, all independently, would come to me and say, Bhuta-Bhavana, you know what? I was thinking about you. I was thinking that you should spend some time serving your spiritual master. They told me that independently. So then I called Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He was in Gitanagari. I called him on the phone and I spoke to him and I said to him, Guru Maharaj, I've been listening to this seminar by Satyananda Maharaj on how to contact the super soul. And then this strange things happen. Many devotees independently, they've all been telling me the same thing, that I should spend some time serving you. And so I told him, I said, I think maybe Krishna wants me to come and spend some time serving you. And he said, yes. He said, if you can get the time off, come and serve me. So then even I scraped up some money. I came to New Vrindavan for the youth retreat, serving Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And then after, I was able to spend some time with him and serve him. And it was Krishna's arrangement, because after the retreat in New Vrindavan, and a few months down the line, he was diagnosed with cancer. And then he couldn't travel, he couldn't go anywhere. Had I not paid attention to those signs coming from the super soul, I would have missed out on a major opportunity to spend some quality time with him before he left the planet. So if you want to go into this topic in more detail, you can find the seminar. It's one of my favorite seminars. It's on Satyananda Maharaj's website. You go to the audio section and you do a search under The Higher Connection. And especially the 6-part series I find is particularly good. He's given the seminar in many different places. So you have the 6-part series, the 2-part series, etc. But I found the 6-part series very good. It goes into a bit more detail. And if you practice that kind of understanding, I've tried to do this in my life, and I get some very distinct indications from Guru, Sadhu, Shastra as to what Krishna wants. It's magical. It's transformed my life. I can honestly say that. So it's something for you to that you can apply in your own life. Does that answer your question, Jiva Pandit?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Queenie. You've got your hand up. How can I be of service to you, please? Hare Krishna. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much. It's so good to hear from you again. I have two questions, actually not related. One was earlier. There's also a question in the chat as well. Maybe you want to look later. So the first question related to the aspect of chanting japa. So I was wondering, what are some of your advice or your tips before and during chanting japa, and in general, as in our day-to-day functioning, to be able to chant more attentively?
Wonderful.
That's my first question.
Okay, so let me answer this one first. There's a few things that come to my heart that to tell you. The first one was a brilliant, and I repeat, it was a brilliant class that I heard over 20 years ago. I'm still getting juice from that class even now. It was 1999. It was a class given in ISKCON London by His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He says the following. He says that he feels that pretty much everyone who comes to our movement can make it all the way back to Godhead. He said, but in many cases, devotees fail. Then he said, I do not think that the devotees get the chanting wrong, which was a very interesting thing to say. I do not think that the devotees get the chanting wrong. He said that often, because the devotees are not correctly situated in life, especially because they're not correctly situated in their varna and in their ashram, he said, therefore, their minds are not peaceful. And because their minds are not peaceful, therefore the chanting becomes difficult. I thought that's very, very insightful. I'm not sure if many of you know, but my wife and I, a few years ago, we did a podcast. It's called the Edanoba Podcast. And one of the things we did in the podcast is we created this model, which is based upon the varnas, right? The 4 varnas which scripture mentions. What I've seen, and I've seen this again and again, and it's incredible. Many devotees think that they're successful because they're so spiritual. And it's not that that's not true or that doesn't have a role to play, it does. But I've seen that many devotees, their success is partly to do with the direct spiritual practices, but it has a lot to do with the fact that they are well situated in their life, and therefore they're not so disturbed by some of the material things, which makes it a bit easier for them to focus on the directly spiritual practices. My spiritual master put it one way. He said, we want money so we don't have to worry about money, for example, right? We want health so we don't have to worry about our health, you know, and we've all seen this. How enthusiastic are you to chant Hare Krishna when your body's in real pain and your mind's in really disturbed? So there's a few factors. The first one to your question is lifestyle. One piece of advice I want to give all devotees, and if you want the reference from scripture, it's the 8th canto Bhagavatam, chapter 2, text number 30. In that particular purport, Prabhupada explains this point about being situated properly in life in order to fight Maya from a position of strength. That's the first reference. Second point, in terms of the more direct before and after practices, so that's the first one we've talked about is lifestyle. The second thing is practices for the japa. There's many things, but what the real thing I wanted to share with you from realization, you will find in scriptures, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, there are many pieces of advice that's given to improve the japa. I found this wonderful, wonderful purport. Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, chapter 15, I think it's text number around 21 to 25. In one of the purports, Prabhupada, he quotes special prayers that we can, he says, and you should, he says, one should chant these prayers in order to become free from the from offenses to the holy name. So 2 prayers. Nikita Shruti Muli Ratnamala, Dutina Rajita Padapanka Janta, Ayi Mutakule Upasyamanam, Paritraswam Sansriyami. I think that last line is slightly wrong, but it's that prayer. And then there's another one. Nivritatase Upagiyamanat Bavo Sadak Chotraman no Biramat Ka Utama Shloka Gunanavadat Puman Radyeta Vina Pashugnat. So Prabhupada quotes those 2 particular verses in this particular purport in the 7th canto. He just gives the first line of those 2 verses. And he says one can chant these verses before japa in order to become free of the reactions, to become free of offenses to the holy name. So you can try that. But the other point I really want to make is you should see what works for you. Because what works for one devotee really well may not have the same impact upon another devotee. So there's loads of techniques. Bhaktivinoda says you can do prayers before you chant. I do that. I find that very, very useful. I like to chant Mangalacharan before I start all my chanting, and I beg for my guru's mercy. That helps a lot. Bhaktivinoda Thakur also says you can actually pull on a blindfold. You can actually blindfold yourself. So let's say you have like like some cloth or a blindfold. Some devotees, they'll pull a blindfold on before they start chanting because they know that with their chanting, they're liable to get distracted. If they put the blindfold on, it makes it harder for them to get distracted. For someone else, they go and chant their devotees they go and chant their rounds in the morning program. Because you're chanting with other devotees, you get the spillover of their devotion, and you're much less likely to look at your phone and all these other things because you're with people who are doing all the same activity. So that's another thing you can do. Someone else, they like to read about the holy name before they chant. My wife has a book full of prayers to the holy name. So she'll recite many different prayers to the holy name before she starts chanting. And when she chants, she'll look at a picture, I think it's of Radharani's lotus feet or Lord Nityananda's lotus feet while she's chanting. See, this is why I want to emphasize, we all have different conditioning. Some devotees, they're more visual. So if they chant while looking at the deity, that really works for them, or looking at a picture of Krishna's lotus feet, or even, and this is mentioned in one of Satyananda Maharaj's books. No, this is mentioned in the book, Japa Meditations, which are different meditations on the holy name. There's one entry, and I'm not sure if it's by Satyananda Maharaj or Ayendra Prabhu. Anyway, I can't remember who it's by. There's one entry in that book, I think it's Satyananda Maharaj, where he talks about you can actually have a visual of the holy name. So you can have the Sanskrit of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and you can look at it while you're chanting, like that. So then what's happening is you're engaging your sense of touch because you're touching the beads. You're engaging your sense of hearing because you're hearing yourself chanting the holy name, but you're also engaging your sense of sight. And the more senses that you can engage, the more powerful it is. Other people like to chant in front of Prabhupada's murti or picture because you'd be scared to be distracted if Prabhupada was sitting in front of you. You would be scared to just start looking at your phone. So some people, they like to do that. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj did that. Many of you saw him. He'd sit in front of the murti of Prabhupada and just chant, Someone else, there's so many different things you can do. So I often encourage devotees, experiment and see what works for you. Also, if you know yourself really well, it can give you clues as to the things that will work. If you know yourself really well, some devotees, they're very intellectual. So reading something about the holy name really works for them before they chant. Some devotees, they're very visual. So looking at the deity before they chant, or looking at Prabhupada, or, like that, different things. Some devotees, they're very much into, they're a bit restless. So walking around Tulsi can help them with their chanting, Some devotees, they're very emotional. They may sing a bhajan before they start chanting. So they can engage their emotions in that. Some devotees, also, I've tried this and it works for me as well. Sometimes you meditate on how Krishna has helped you in your life. And then with that mood of gratitude, once you've invoked that gratitude in your heart, then you start chanting. And that emotion of gratitude starts coming out in your chanting. So anyway, there's many different ideas, but you should see what works for you. Does that answer your question, Queenie? Okay.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's wonderful. I have one more question, if that's okay.
Yes.
And it was kind of, yeah. When you was answering the question from Madhura Chukta about being given feedback, I mentioned this before to you, like the aspect of low self-esteem, and when you have a low self-esteem, then when being given feedback from others is just so difficult to deal with. So then what's your advice on that?
Yes, good question. So I asked Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj a question and he answered it in a disciples meeting in the UK. And then I found out also that he'd answered that same question many times, and it's in the book Reflections on Sacred Teachings, Shikshashtakam. So that's the first book in the Reflections on Sacred Teachings series. And it's in chapter 3, which is the commentary on the Trinadapi Sanicchana verse. Okay. And you can also hear the same point in the audio seminar on the Shikshashtakam, which is on btswami.com. So if you look at the third the third lecture in that seminar series, which is actually on the Shikshashikam verse 3. So in that particular, when he answered my question, he said, there's two ways of playing God. He said, one way of playing God is to think I'm the greatest. Okay, so I'm the best. Everyone, I'm better than everyone. Now, incidentally, I found where he got that from. That's also mentioned in the 11th canto, Bhagavatam, chapter 25. In that chapter of the 11th canto, there are a series of verses on the modes of material nature. And in one of the verses, I'm not sure if it's 11, 25, 21. It may be that one. It may be another one. But anyway, if you look at the 11th canto, chapter 25, if you read through the verses, in one of the verses which talks about the mode of passion, it explains that one of the symptoms of the mode of passion, it's Krishna speaking to Uddhava. Krishna speaks to Uddhava and he explains that one of the symptoms of the mode of passion is that the person thinks that they are better than others. Okay, so one way of playing God is through pride and arrogance, which is the mode of passion. I'm better than other people. The other way of playing God is through the mode of ignorance, which is where I think that I'm a victim, right? Everyone's, no one looks after me. No one cares about me. No one treats me properly. Everyone ignores me. So he explained that in both cases, we're putting ourselves in the center. Okay, so, and also just to your point, Queenie, I did a whole podcast on this, and the link is in the chat for this Zoom. So my wife and I, based upon these statements and based upon bringing a few of these things together from scripture, we created what we call the self-esteem spectrum. So basically, pride is self-esteem in the mode of passion. So I've got excessive self-esteem. I think I'm better than other people. Then you have self-esteem in the mode of ignorance, which is where I have an inferiority complex. Okay, I feel like, I don't feel like I'm enough. And I feel like everyone doesn't treat me properly. I feel that, I'm a victim. That's self-esteem in the mode of ignorance. So healthy self-esteem is self-esteem in the mode of goodness. So what does it mean? It's actually what Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita. Pandita Samadarshana, equal vision. I'm not better than anyone, but I'm also not inferior to anyone either. And if I really accept that deep within my heart, it allows me to be assertive. It allows me not to overreact, and it allows me not to underreact. It also allows me to choose to just ignore negative behavior as and when required. So what we're looking for is self-esteem in the mode of goodness. And in the podcast, we mentioned some means by which we can get that. A few key things you should know. Generally, by engaging in devotional service in the mode of goodness, by associating with devotees who have healthy self-esteem, by practicing dealing respectfully towards other people, and this is really where people often make the mistake. If you practice dealing respectfully towards other people and dealing respectfully towards yourself, you see, if you practice those dynamics together, it will naturally develop self-esteem in the mode of goodness. Another way of pulling this is that you're compassionate towards other people while also being compassionate towards yourself. If you practice self-compassion and compassion towards others, self-respect and respect towards others consistently, you'll develop healthy self-esteem. Another way of looking at this is that you should treat yourself in the way that you would treat someone that you love and care for, as a friend. If you do that, those behaviors will invoke self-esteem. See, what you're basically doing, low self-esteem is a samskar in the subconscious mind. So when you start treating yourself with dignity and respect, while also respecting others, what you're actually, the message you're sending into your subconscious, the samskar that you're placing into your subconscious mind is that I'm also important. They're important and I'm important. And this is what Krishna also says to Arjuna, Samoham Sarvabhuteshu. I am equal, kind, and merciful to everyone. You see? So when we have healthy self-esteem, we're really accepting what Krishna says. That's also why it's important to study Prabhupada's books. If you study Prabhupada's books with humility and receptiveness, your self-esteem will definitely improve. I've seen it in the lives of many devotees. Devotees think that studying Prabhupada's books is, okay, it's a bit, they don't understand. Studying Prabhupada's books, and who said this? Kadamba Kandamaraj said this. He said the easiest way to stay in the mode of goodness is to study Prabhupada's books. See, there's lots of secrets in spiritual life. I'll tell you one, and this has been exciting me forever. You see, there's many things that are said in scripture, but they're said like a sutra. That means you're given a statement, but there's so much involved in that statement if you start to look deeply into it. One of the statements in scripture is that the spiritual master is our father, and it says, who is our mother? It said, some of you know this statement. The spiritual master is our father, and our mother is the what? It's the Vedas. Okay? Devotees don't really understand what that means. There's a hidden meaning. It's called Vyanjana Vritti, the implied meaning. The hidden meaning of the fact that the Vedas are our mother means that if you study Prabhupada's books sincerely and deeply, they will actually nourish you. Right? It's Shakti. The scriptures, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam, it has a nourishing effect. And what is that nourishing effect? The actual nourishing effect, the proper feminine energy, what it delivers to a living entity is a sense of unconditional love. The fatherly energy is a sense of responsibility, but the motherly energy traditionally is a sense of unconditional love. So if devotees study Prabhupada's books sincerely and deeply and consistently, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, it's going to be done consistently because then you deepen the samskar. If devotees study Prabhupada's books on a regular basis, you will start to feel in a very deep way, it will actually pull a samskar into your deep unconscious mind. It will actually do more than that. Through your intelligence, via your intelligence, it will pull a samskar into your unconscious. But the real magic is you will get the voice of the super soul amplified. Because when the scriptures are regularly studied, it makes your mind more peaceful. And because the mind is more peaceful, you will actually get that sense from within you, Krishna really loves me. Because he actually tells the devotee in the heart, I really love you. You're really dear to me. But we can't hear it. And it's because we don't study. So because we don't study, all the natural encouragement and love and appreciation and support that Krishna actually gives in the heart, we don't sense it. So then we feel that, everything's so difficult. But if you actually studied, you'll feel, because Krishna's in the heart telling you this all the time. I heard this in one class. He likes to talk a lot. He likes to talk to his, but what he actually says is, you can do it. I love you. You can be successful. I'd love, we're going to be together in the spiritual world. He gives a lot of encouragement, but the devotees don't hear it because they don't study Prabhupada's books. So through the intelligence, you get something, and from the super soul. So from the heart upwards, you get the super soul telling you lots of loving encouragement. And through the intelligence, through the scripture, you get the same message. They actually reinforce each other because the scriptures are the voice of Guru, who is the voice of the super soul. You see? So those are some points. Remind me the question, actually, because I've gone off on a rant. I've forgotten what your question was.
The question, I think you answer everything beautifully. That's just when you're given feedback and you have low self-esteem, it's difficult for you to get it because it's sort of really overwhelmed with the aspect. Oh my God, I'm such a bad person, blah blah blah. But I think I get the answer that, we just need to learn how to have healthy self-esteem, and then we will gradually can receive feedback more healthily as well.
Yeah, but also emphasizing a key exercise here: associate with people who are encouraging and loving. Find that, and that's directly in scripture, by the way. There's a verse. It's a beautiful verse, and there's a verse in the scripture. It says, it talks about association. Again, devotees don't, because see, the thing is, we don't know how to apply the philosophy because we don't read. And then when we get hurt, then we think, why did Krishna do this to me? But Krishna's thing is, no, I love you. I want to help you. I've given all the instructions that you can avoid all this unnecessary suffering, but you don't take any advantage of the instructions I gave you, and you practice spiritual life without following the advice that I've given. And because you do it in the way that's different from the advice I've given, it therefore becomes a lot harder than it's meant to be. I've seen on average, devotees are practicing spiritual life on average about 5 times harder than it has to be, on average. And I can see because they don't read. They don't even know how to practice it. and beyond the basics, right? So you get the basics in day one. I'll give you an example. When we were at this retreat, there's a famous Kirtaniya, Akinchana Krishna Prabhu. I think some of you know him. He's a famous Kirtaniya. He was at the retreat with his wife. He came. So they were doing kirtans in the evenings as for our retreat group. And I was doing the seminars in the daytime. If you want, I can try and find the link to the seminars. So one of the seminars, we were talking about this association and how to associate. So much nectar was coming up. Akinchana Krishna's wife, she mentioned Bhaktivinoda Thakur states that in order to protect one's bhajan, one should have different degrees of distance in association with different devotees. So some devotees you keep close, some devotees you love from a bit of a distance, etc., etc. And I heard the same thing from my spiritual master. And I asked her, and she said that she thinks it's from Bhajana Rahasya, but it may be from another scripture of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But he says that. Now, there's another verse, and this is why I was going back to the verse I was mentioning. And you can look this up. There's a verse, and it talks about snigdha, swajati. Snigdha means affectionate. There's an actual verse in the scripture that says that your association should be affectionate, which is snigdha. It should be swajati, which means like-minded. You know, and Prabhupada also makes that same point. It's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 29, text number 17 in the purple. He makes the same point, but he just talks about swajati. He says that your friendship should be made with people who have mutual interest and mutual understanding. So the devotees, we should be loving to everyone. But the people that you're particularly close to should be people who they understand you and you understand them. You see, then you feel heard, you feel understood. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't give advice and tell us where we need to improve. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be open to everyone's advice, but you can't be close to everyone. There are over 9 million members in ISKCON. You cannot be close friends with everyone. You can love all the devotees, and we should. But who you are very close to, this is very important. Some devotees have come to this movement. They've been sentimental. They've revealed their mind to devotees in the mode of ignorance and passion. Those devotees have treated them harshly, or something that they shared in confidence, those devotees have gone and gossiped about it, and then they've been really hurt. And then they think, why did Krishna do this to me? Actually, and I heard this directly, there's a seminar on devotee relationships where Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj says we do not have to be close to devotees in the mode of ignorance and passion. We should respect them, we should love them, but we don't have to be close to them. He said it directly, and you can find it on btswami.com. So it's all there, but we don't know that. We think, oh, because I'm a devotee, they're a devotee, we should love everyone, and we should love everyone, that's right, actually. But then we should reveal our hearts and all the intimate detail to everyone. No, that's a mental speculation. That is not what the scripture has said. That's us speculating and giving our own misunderstanding in Krishna consciousness. And then when we get hurt, then who gets the blame? We blame Krishna, but it's not Krishna's fault, you see? So this is the point. In order to apply the teachings properly, please, it's changed my life. I can't lie to you. I encourage you, actually learn the teachings. The devotees who actually study Prabhupada's books, the way that they live Krishna consciousness is very different to the devotees who don't study. Honest truth, you know? And I've seen the devotees, they go through so much pain, and it's like it was all avoidable. I personally have seen 95% of the suffering that the devotees go through in Krishna consciousness is avoidable if they actually practice their spiritual life according to scripture, not according to, and this is what happens, not according to the material conditioning that they brought in to the movement from their previous life and from their conditioned nature. 95% of the suffering can be avoided. I've got so many examples to give you. I'll give you one. I was asked, I'm just being very honest, I think we're family. I was asked to be involved in a particular project. It was a charity project. And because I studied scripture, I did an analysis of the people involved and the person leading it. And I knew that the person leading the project, there was so much mode of passion. And this person, they burnt out so many other people, they made so many enemies. And also, because they were in the mode of passion, the way that they structured the project, they just got people involved who didn't have the right competencies to do the service. So I could see that they hadn't done things in the mode of goodness. That I could see there was no thought. And then I knew if I get involved, I would spend all my time and energy having to correct all the things they've already done. So when they asked me to get involved, I knew I already got things on. So I told them the truth because I already packed back to back. But I also knew that, first of all, I don't have capacity. But even if I did have capacity, the way that this has been set up is a car crash waiting to happen. I could see it. And so because I was using the lens of the modes of material nature, which is technically, we call this Shastra Chakshus. I could see and analyze the situation according to the scripture. And I could see that if I get involved, this is the implication. And I don't have the capacity for it. So therefore, I'm not going to do it. You see? So this is just to give you some thoughts on that. So I really encourage you. People think the Prabhupada's book, yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, if I feel like it. You can't imagine. You can't imagine how much pain and suffering it would save you if you were to read. And again, the trick is there's a whole thing in the scriptures about regularity. You don't get the same effect if you do something sporadically as if you do it regular. If you even read Prabhupada's books for 5 minutes a day with a bit of attention and you do it regularly, I guarantee you within 1 month, your consciousness will change significantly. Within 1 month. I've done this experiment. I know other devotees who've done it. It's that powerful. So what happened, the reason why we often struggle in spiritual life is we don't take the medicine properly. And then because we can't tell the difference between how much of it is us and how much of it is Krishna, we think it just has to be this difficult. You see, and then the trick is, if we associate with other devotees who also don't take the medicine properly, then instead of thinking we all don't take the medicine properly, we think this is just how spiritual life has to be for everyone. But it's wrong. There are many things that if people do them properly, your suffering will go down significantly and the speed of progress will go up significantly. And the reading is one of the key things in that sense. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for your question, Queenie. Let me go to Devaki Priti. You have a question or comment?
Thank you so much. Yes, I have a question. Just trying to see how to formulate it. So how you talked like in your class about, how Prabhupada talks a lot about how we're not the body and how when we really understand that, then even if our body is affected, our consciousness is not affected. And lately I've been having a lot of trouble with my health, and I'm trying to figure out how can I use that to help me in my service, and how can I keep my consciousness strong even if the body is not so physically strong. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. So what comes to mind is the statement by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Chaitanya Shikshamrita, and many of you will have heard of this. Now, this is a big thing that's confused many devotees. You see, many devotees, when we hear we're not the body, we think therefore we should neglect it. But that's not what the scripture says. In fact, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a conversation between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sanatana Goswami. And Sanatana Goswami, his body's in a bad state. There's pus oozing out the pores in his skin, and Lord Chaitanya actually embraces him. Sanatana Goswami wanted to commit suicide because his body was in such bad shape. But Lord Chaitanya chastised him and said, who are you to commit suicide? This body belongs to me. Your body is mine. So you have no right to do anything to my body, like that. Now, what does that mean? If we take this along with Bhaktivinoda Thakur's statement, it's not that we have to spend lots of time on this, not at all. Small things make a big difference. For example, if devotees eat at regulated times, that really helps your body and it helps longevity of your body. Now, of course, don't get fanatical. If because of service, you can't eat at the regulated time, don't worry about it, okay? Even if devotees chew their food properly before they swallow, that can add years to your life. If devotees actually sleep early and wake up early, there's studies on this. I can send you the details. It's called the circadian rhythm. If you sleep early and rise early, it affects what's called the circadian rhythm, which is like an internal body clock. And according to Ayurvedic studies, it can add at least 10 years, not 10 years to your life. Get this. It can add 10 years of good health. There's a difference between having 10 years longer. Let's say you live from 80 to 90, but you're in really bad shape. No, it's saying it will add 10 years of health to your life. So many of the things that Prabhupada has given, we don't follow it because we don't actually know why we're meant to follow it. And that's where the scripture comes in. if you study carefully, you're told not only what to do, but you're told why you should do it and the benefit that will come by doing it. Now, it's a bit more than that. For example, if you do those good things regularly, then when situations come up where you can't do it, it doesn't matter. It's like this. So the last 2 years, there was a pandemic. Some people, they lost their job or they couldn't work, like let's say restaurants were shut down, etc. But some people, they've been saving their money, okay? They had significant savings. So when the pandemic came and they couldn't work, they could fall back on their savings. In other words, they built some economic or financial capacity which would carry them through this difficult time. You see the point? So in the same way, when you practice good habits, sleeping early, rising early, chanting early, studying Prabhupada's books, honoring prasadam properly, even honoring the right prasadam, not having junk food all the time. It's prasadam, but it's pizza. It's prasadam, but it's chips. It's prasadam, but it's all fried. Even these small things, if you do it, what happens is you're building up your health capacity. So then if you go to a friend's party and it's all pizzas, that's fine. You can have the pizzas because normally you eat healthy. So when you have a pizza from time to time or some fried food, it's not going to do anything because your health capacity is so good that you can afford to do, to have the indulgence. But if your health capacity is really small, then any bad food, it can really take you off schedule. Okay, so that's one thing. I advise devotees to do like a little bit, maybe pranayam or yoga if you need to, or just dance enthusiastically in the kirtan. All of these things are small things. Like, you see Bhakti Titamaj is like, he's dancing, it's like he's exercising at the same time. And he did it deliberately. And no, seriously. And I remember him saying, every year when he goes to the GBC meetings in Mayapur in India, he said many times there are different God brothers who are not coming to the GBC meetings. Why are they not coming? They've called in sick. And what did he say? He said the reason why they've called in sick is often illnesses which are stress related, right? Because and it's completely understandable. If we're not careful, what do? If we're not careful, our philosophy, it can make us so much armchair philosophers that we don't use our body sufficiently in service. But the body is a yantra. The body is a machine, it's a vehicle. So if you want to keep your body working properly, you have to regularly work your body. You see, that's the secret. But it has to be done appropriate to you as an individual. So they did a study. I think the country is Sardinia. They found that the people in that country, they tend to live longer than other people. So scientists and psychologists and sociologists, they tried to study why do they live longer? What is it about their lifestyle that makes them live longer? And what they found was that those people, they wouldn't use cars so much and so on. They would walk everywhere, right? So if they're going to visit a friend, rather than driving a car, if they could walk it, they would walk, they would do gardening. So basically, the basic point is they kept their body sufficiently physically active. And for that one reason alone, their body was in very good shape for many, many years, right? So what I'd say is, I would say I have to give you the essence because everyone's got a different body. That's another thing. Some people, their body is Vata dosha. Some people, their body is Pitta dosha. Some people, their body is Kapha dosha, different Ayurvedic body types. So different types of body, they need to be dealt with in slightly different ways. I would encourage you, find out what works for you. How much exercise works for you? What type of foods work for you? What kind of schedule works for you? And try to do that to keep your body in good health. And if anyone wants to know more about it, it's amazing. I've even come across Ayurvedic herbs, which are incredibly useful for your body. I have a friend, really interesting person. He's a devotee. He's an Ayurvedic doctor. I mean, and when I say he's an Ayurvedic doctor, I mean, he's an Ayurvedic doctor. Get this. This friend of mine, I was first told about him last year. So in December last year, I was told, he can really help you with your health and so on. And he lives in Hong Kong. So I thought, because and my friend said, get in touch with him. He'll do a health check for you Ayurvedically. And I thought, how is this possible? Because I've seen Ayurvedic doctors. What they do is they take your pulse, they ask you questions, etc. So I thought, how is it possible that this person is going to give me a health check when he's in Hong Kong? I can't go to Hong Kong. I'm in London. He can't come to London, or he's not going to come to London. And my friend said, Don't worry. Go ahead. So what do? I contact this person. You know, you have to pay him, and I got an assessment. So we have an assessment on Zoom. How does he give me an assessment? He's got a siddhi, right? So what he does is I give him permission, and when I give him permission, he's able to read my aura at a distance. And then he's able to actually tell me about my health and what's there and what needs to be fixed, etc., etc. That's how he actually does the reading. See? So again, these things are there, but anyway, you get the point. The key point is understand where your health is and try to see what do I need to do and see what things work for you. It could be, there may be things you can do Ayurvedically or in other areas, but simple things make a big difference. And sometimes we have to be patient because sometimes you may start something small for your health, maybe just a bit of breathing, etc. And it may take a while before that fully kicks in. But something small but done consistently can have infinite impact or very powerful impact. Does that help you, Devaki?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other question or comment? And by the way, it's wonderful to see you, Mother Yashoda Mai. Thank you for coming on the call. Oh, there's, yes, Mother Yashoda Mai, were you going to say something before I go to Jagannath Pandit?
I was just going to say, Haribol Prabhu, thank you so much. Your classes are actually, I'm considering your class to be the gift that we're supposed to give to Brahmanas at the end of Nirjal Pandava Nirjal Akadashi. You know how it says that you're supposed to go make an offering to Brahmanas. So your class is your offering to me for the end of a Panjal Nirjala Akadashi. So I thank you. and I'm looking forward to looking at all of these classes that you gave us too. And I take your words very, very seriously. Every time I hear you make a suggestion, I try to implement it in my life, and you're right that it's definitely improving my spiritual life and the way that I'm dealing with myself and my God brothers and sisters and everybody else. So I thank you so much. You're a gift.
Thank you for the gift of your association. I know that Mother Yashoda Mai, in all the time I've known you, you're just a natural leader. And so I'm so inspired by your example and also the years of very sincere, dedicated, and whenever I'm with you, I always feel heartfelt. It's not just service. It's from the heart. It's coming from a very powerful, very sincere place. And I take that's a real example for me to follow. So thank you for that.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I saw Jagannath Pandit had his hand up. So was there something you were going to share, Jagannath Pandit?
Yes, I just want to say that I feel Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada coming through you in such practical application of the philosophy. And I want to say that I have never seen this, where we've gone 2 times farther than the usual Bhagavatam class, and the class attendance actually increases during the class, and everybody's in rapt attention. That says how everybody is so hungry. Even after Nirjala Ekadashi, everyone is so hungry for more Krishna consciousness. So appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's no, we've all been given a great gift by Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual masters and all the association of devotees. Our job is to take really take full advantage of the gift, you know, and that's really the point. How can I take full advantage? How can I personalize it? How can I, you know, what do I need at my stage in the process based upon who I am, based upon the instructions I was given by Guru, Sadhu, Shastra? It's not one size fits all, right? It's a real personal thing, right? And then, you know, I just want to answer one last question. So it was in the chat. It says, Hare Krishna, you mentioned that Maya attacks where we have our weaknesses. If our weaknesses is skepticism of authority or lacking trust in authority, how do we address this? Authority in this case referring to institutional authorities, e.g. the GBC, and not the authority of the Vedas. Yes, that's very simple. That, first of all, that's normal in Kali Yuga. Where that comes from is where people are let down by their parents. Then they tend to have a samskar whereby authority is seen with distrust. And then what happens is not only do they distrust authorities in the world, but actually in many cases, and we see this with many Guru Kulis, they have a distrust in the authority of Krishna as well. So therefore they don't surrender. So that's one point. Second, how to deal with this, there's a few things to remember. First of all, our authorities, they're people, and they're also people. They have hopes, dreams, and desires like we do. They have weaknesses like we do. So the first thing to be very careful of, let me put it this way. There was a youth retreat many years ago, maybe 10, 15, it's over 17 years ago. And one Prabhupada disciple made a very interesting point. He said to the youth, he said, if you don't respect your parents, then when you grow up, your children are going to spit in your face and disrespect you in the same way that you did to your own parents. The point he was trying to make is how you deal with your authorities is exactly how you're going to be dealt with when you become an authority. You see? So people think it's like, yeah, they're not doing this. Yeah, but they're limited, they're conditioned, they often make mistakes. Don't hate them. Don't be blind either, right? Because sometimes people behave really badly. So don't be in denial, but we want to know the truth so that with compassion, we can see how to help. Because even the people who don't behave properly, you should know if they don't behave properly, it means they're dealing with the mode of passion and ignorance. If they're dealing with the mode of passion and ignorance, whether you see it or not, they're suffering, and they're going to suffer a lot more by their bad behavior. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj writes in the Leadership for an Age of Higher Consciousness 2, and I think it's even in 1, when someone takes on a position of authority, they get a certain percentage of the good karma of the people that they're leading. They also get a certain percentage of the bad karma. So if someone is so foolish, and I really do emphasize it, if someone in ISKCON is so foolish that they think that I'm going to be a leader and then I'm going to have all the power, they don't understand. You're going to get such a reaction. If you don't take care of people properly, if you take on a position of leadership and you don't take care of the people properly, you are going to get such a kick that you will virtually wish you'd never taken on that position in the first place. So anyone who thinks I'm going to be a leader and everyone's going to look at me and glorify me, it's just people who are immature. Anyone who's mature knows leadership in ISKCON or leadership anywhere is not just I call the shots and everyone bows down. It's not like that at all. It's going to be a real work, and that's especially if you don't behave properly. Most devotees, most people, if they knew what leadership entails, they would not be so quick to jump into positions of power and control. They would think twice. That's the first point. Second, so we have to have compassion for the people who are so stupid that they've taken on a position of authority where now there's an amplification of good and bad karma, and they're acting badly. It's like a suicide attempt. It's someone who really has absolutely no clue what they've let themselves in for. So we should feel compassion for them, first of all. Now, the second thing is, to be very honest, going back to the point that Sarvatma made, you should understand that you're a leader. See, let me explain it like this. There are no accidents. I'm in a particular temple or community with a particular type of leadership. It's not an accident. There's some reason why I'm in this situation. There's something that I'm meant to learn from this situation. There's something I'm meant to give in this situation. There's something I'm meant to use for my growth in this situation. Okay, so unless you have that bigger view, the reason why we get so disturbed, we get disturbed because we get caught up in the petty, and the reason why we get caught up in the petty is because we lose sight of that which is great. We lose sight of the bigger picture. And again, that goes back to Queenie's point. If we don't read, you'll get so caught up in petty things because you don't see the bigger picture, because we're not in touch with the transcendental knowledge that helps us to understand, no, this is just one thing that you're meant to learn from in the entire span of your life, in this tiny planet called Earth, which is one speck of dust in this tiny universe, which is one of the tiniest universes on journey back to back home, back to Godhead. We lose perspective. So the way we deal with this, have compassion for them. Second, do what you can do. But I was in year 2000, I was in Mayapur, Gaurapanim. There was different seminars. There was a seminar, you can find this online, 5-part seminar by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, Strengthening Our Vaishnava Community. And he said something very interesting. He said, oftentimes, the big changes in our movement have happened from the grassroots level. You understand? So oftentimes, the leaders aren't the ones always driving the change. In fact, I'll be honest, I often feel a lot of compassion for the leaders. They're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. When things go wrong, everyone blames them. When things go right, no one gives them the credit. It's not easy being a leader, right? So, and also, it's unrealistic what people expect of the leaders so often. Why? Because if I ask you right now, to do a survey of ISKCON and to do a survey of the majority of the leaders in ISKCON, and I'm going to ask someone to unmute and just give me the answer honestly. If you did a survey, would you find that the majority of the leaders in ISKCON have been trained in leadership? Yes or no? What do you honestly think?
Absolutely no. Absolutely no.
Yeah,
Absolutely no.
yeah, absolutely not. So then let's just be. We're not children. We're adults, right? Let's be honest. You have the majority of leaders in ISKCON, and they've not been trained in leadership. So what should you expect? Should you expect that they're going to lead really well, or should you expect they're going to make lots of mistakes? What would the mature, realistic, practical adult who has his or her feet on the ground, what would you expect?
It's training on the job.
Well, I don't know. I would argue many of the leaders, even training on the job isn't there so much. I personally, and I'm saying that as a professional who trains leaders, I know what training leadership is because I do it as a job. And then I look at what happens in ISKCON, there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference. I'd say that most of them aren't trained. Even what I told you about taking time to think, most of them, they won't even know to do that. It'll just be putting out fires. So we should feel sorry for them. And then what happens is, then because, all right, I get it. He's doing the best he can, or she's doing the best he can. They've had no training in leadership. They may be good pujaris, yes. That doesn't mean that they're trained in leadership, right? They may be able to give an awesome class, wonderful. It doesn't mean they're trained in leadership. So then what should I do? Help the dude out, right? Understand this is what I can expect because they've had no training. Now, what can we do to complement this because the Christians allowed them to be in charge? How can we complement it to make sure that they succeed? Because they've had no training, right? Only a child would see someone who's had no training and expect them to do a great job. It doesn't make sense. It's not logical. It doesn't make any sense. So when I hear the voice, I'm like, dude, come on, let's be logical here. If the dudes had no training, you can't expect them to be first class. No way. Okay. Now, the other thing we could do is give them feedback. That doesn't mean that's not an excuse for the leaders to do a poor job. That's the other thing. So there's no, you can't have any extremes. You can't expect perfection of people who've got no leadership training, and the leaders can't say that, okay, I've had no leadership training, so everyone should just tolerate my poor leadership. No, the other side is if you're a leader and you've had no leadership training, get off your backside and get some training. Go and learn how to lead, find out, get feedback, try your best, and be honest with the congregation and say, look, this is how much training I've had. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm open to improvement. Please help me. Right? So one fault is in the congregation because they're completely unrealistic. And the other fault is in the leader because the leader doesn't see that they have a deficiency and doesn't do what they can do to overcome the deficiency. So the example that's often used, like a young girl who becomes pregnant, she's a child and she's also a mother. If she pretends that she's a mature mother, she's in trouble. The child will suffer because she's not a mature mother. So she has to take shelter of mature motherhood to learn how to be a mature mother. That's one extreme. The other is if she pretends, if she said, no one trained me to be a mum, so therefore I shouldn't do the job. No, but you're still in a position where that child is looking to you for guidance and sustenance. So you have to simultaneously do the best you can, knowing it's deficient, while learning from good examples how to do your job and how to do it properly. That's the point. That's realistic, and that's how we can actually deal with this. So the realist don't expect that the institutional authority should be perfect because they often haven't got much experience, much learning, much training. And I'll be honest, that's not the worst of it. Even worse, they've had bad examples. So they think they're great leaders, but they've been taking on examples of bad leaders. That's even worse, right? It's the analogy. So you have these schools in Europe that teach classical music. And when the children come to learn classical music, the first question they're asked, have you ever played classical music before? If they say no, then you charge them one fee. If the child who comes to learn says, yeah, I've played classical music before, then you charge them even more money because you have to unteach them all the bad stuff that they've learned before you can teach them how to learn classical music properly. So even worse, sometimes you have people who've learned the wrong thing, right? Who've learned from bad examples. To lead, I should just be harsh, rude, disrespectful, etc. They've learned the wrong thing. And then that's even worse. and it takes even more time to undo. Anyway, does that answer I hope that answers your question about leadership. This is from the post that was put in by BYL, Back to Yoga London. Yeah. And I'll add one more thing. So I think it's important to add this last thing. And that is that with leadership and with everything, one level is to see what we can do to help, etc. But the highest level, and I really want to encourage all of you, the highest level is to understand, why has Krishna put me in this situation? What am I meant to learn from it? That's the highest level. And I want to give you a scriptural reference for this. So in the Bhagavatam first canto, what happens? Vidura has been speaking to Dhritarashtra many times over. He keeps telling Dhritarashtra, what's wrong with you? Your sons, these Kauravas, they're not treating the Pandavas properly. You should tell them this is wrong, right? In fact, we hear earlier that when Duryodhana is born, what does Vidura tell Dhritarashtra? He tells Dhritarashtra, you should kill this son. All these omens indicate that your son, this Duryodhana, he will be the cause of the destruction of your entire dynasty. You should kill him, right? So that's there. Mahabharata, Bhagavatam, we hear these things. Now, what happens? Dhritarashtra can't hear. Vidura has been giving him good advice continually. He doesn't listen. And what does Vidura do? First canto Bhagavatam. At one point, Vidura realizes that I've tried my best, it's not working. And what does he do? He realizes I should go on pilgrimage and prepare to leave. You see? So in any situation, more than the mechanics of what's going on, what we're trying to understand is, what is Krishna trying to teach me? That's what you really want to get to. What is the lesson Krishna's trying to teach me? It could be, for some of us, he's trying to teach us tolerance. For some of us, he's trying to teach us to pay attention. For some of us, he's trying to teach us, look, I gave you a heads up about this. You didn't listen to me. I want you to pay attention to what I'm telling you in the heart. Trust your intuition, because it's my voice. So the real thing, where we can't go wrong, is, what is Krishna trying to teach me? Prabhupada, what happens? Prabhupada goes, he's preaching first in India. No one's listening to him. He's a saint, he's a pure devotee, he's sannyas, he's preaching, he's doing these Back to Godhead magazines. No one listens to him. He's a Nitya Siddha who no one's listening to. What does he realize? He realized eventually this is all because Krishna wants me to go to the West. Why does Krishna want him to go to the West? Because that's the instruction his guru gave him. And because his guru gave him the instruction to go and preach to the West, when he was preaching in India at first, it was a failure. It was a failure. Krishna allowed him to fail. Why? Because I don't want you to preach to these Indian people first. I told you through Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to go and preach in the West, right? So when you try and preach in India, no success, because you're not meant to preach in India first of all, you're meant to preach in the West. And of course, he preaches in the West, insanely successful, and then he comes back and preaches in India as well. Prabhupada said in one place, he said, my Guru Maharaj told me to preach in the West. He said, but I also did India also, because I couldn't bear to not also help, that mother country. Technically, he didn't have to preach in India. Prabhupada comes to the West for 1 year, no one listens to him. Lilamrita, if you read it, he says, I would go back to the dock from where he came on the steamship. I would go back to the dock and think about going back to India, thinking this is a lost cause. He told Tamal Krishna Maharaj later on, I realized later on that 1 year where I was struggling, Krishna was just strengthening me for what lay ahead. Think about that point. Think about that point in your own life. Sometimes you go through a struggle and you think, why is Krishna doing this? But he's doing it to make you so strong. He's trying to make us so strong to prepare us for what's coming next. So Bhakti Maharaj gave the example. He said the scientists, they were doing an experiment. They were looking at how caterpillars transform into butterflies. So what they saw, the caterpillar, it creates this cocoon around it. And then they saw at one point, the butterfly was struggling to get out of the cocoon. So what did the scientists do? To help the butterfly, they started to cut part of the cocoon open so the butterfly could come out more easily. So they did it. So the butterfly comes out of the cocoon, it flaps its wings, and nothing happened. It flaps its wings again, nothing happened. It kept flapping its wings and it couldn't fly. So you have a butterfly who can't fly. And so the scientists tried to understand what went wrong. And then what did they realize? They realized that when the caterpillar goes into the cocoon and then struggles to come out of the cocoon, that struggle is actually designed by nature to build the strength in the wings of the butterfly, so when it eventually gets out of the cocoon, it can fully fly. You see? And by the scientists disrupting that process, making it easier. Think about it. They actually made it easier for the butterflies. You could think, oh, we care, you know, we're altruistic, we want to do what's best for the butterfly. Because they made it easier for the butterfly to get out, they actually disabled the butterfly in terms of what the butterfly needed for the next stage of its existence. And so Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was making the point that Krishna doesn't make that mistake. So sometimes our challenges, our difficulties, our struggles, they're a gift. We may not think that at the time. We may not think that when we're going through the struggle, but what we don't understand is Krishna knows what the next stage is for you. And he knows what you need to learn, how strong you need to be, the intelligence you need to have, the understanding you need to have, the association you need to have, so that you become successful in the next stage of your spiritual life. So again, this is coming back to Shastra Chakshus. This is why I'm encouraging all of you to read and hear regularly, because it changes the way that you see things. You see? It changes the way that you see things. So when you're going through something, you can even be in bliss. And you're going through a genuine struggle, but you have a sense, I know there's a reason for this. I know that there's a reason for this. And I know I'm learning and growing and understanding immensely from what's going on, even though externally it looks difficult. I tell you from experience, I had 11 years, I had some fatigue, right? Because of my health, I had some fatigue. 11 years. But I can tell you honestly, I mean, if I told you the realizations I've had over these 11 years, it's like night and day. It has changed the entire way that I see everyone, I see myself, I see my spiritual life, I see the teaching. It's taken a complete 360-degree transformation. I'm telling I swear that on my own life. It's literally changed. I mean, before now, if I look now, I have to say that before I was like I didn't know anything. I was completely naive as to how things work. So that's the point I'm trying to make, you know? There's the struggles, the difficulties, the challenges, all of these things. If you're regularly in touch with the teachings, you won't see it the same way. And you'll understand there's always a loving hand behind what's going on. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that we allow any negative situations. We do our best. This is the scripture. From the example of Bhagavad Gita and what Krishna told Arjuna, what it means is we proactively do our best according to Guru Sadhu Shastra. And then whatever happens as a result, then we take that as Krishna's mercy. Right? I want to make that very clear. You have devotees that go to extremes. They just do, and they don't have any dependence on Krishna. That's not good. You're depending on your karma. That's not good. And then the other extreme, the devotees, I'm just going to surrender to Krishna, and they're lazy. They're not doing anything. No, that's also not wanted. That's not what the scripture says. You do your best. You act according to Guru Sadhu Shastra. You act according to the instructions that you were specifically given by your guru and by your gurus, because you have the Diksha Guru, you have your Shiksha Gurus, all of them, they're important. You act upon that, and then whatever happens as a result of you doing the best to fulfill the instructions you've been given, then you say that that's Krishna's will, and then you deal with that accordingly. So there's always that consultation. Again, not dependent, I can't think for myself. Not independent, I can't ask other people for their views and help and feedback. Healthy interdependence. So I think for myself, as Prabhupada said, you have to fly your own plane. And at the same time, I get guidance from others around me. So I get the full benefit of the collective realization, purity, and intelligence of all the devotees in my association who are relevant for whatever's going on. Okay. Hope that clarifies that point. Okay. Any last question or comment before we end? Okay, so I'm just going to say one more thing. This is this is a shameless plug. I'm gonna come to the question from Jay in a moment. But before I come to the question from Jay, I'm just gonna put this in the chat. So bear with me 1 second. This is a shameless plug for our Instagram. So, I'm on Instagram. As I said, we're going to encourage you, if there's any, like, if people are into Instagram and stuff like that, then feel free to follow us on Instagram. And I think I'm going to try and put my Instagram handle here. Let's see if this actually works. Trying to get this into okay, it's in the WhatsApp chat. Yeah, and then now I should come to the question by Jay. I'm not sure what Jay stands for, but it sounds really cool. If you can unmute and if you can ask a question. So first of all, who is the elusive Jay? Jay, are you there? Okay, Jay may be just a hand, maybe an impersonal program. So I'm going to let that go for now. Any other questions or comments? Oh, okay, Tarika, I saw you unmuted. Was there anything you wanted to ask, Tarika?
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your class. I have a quick question. You spoke about the issue of low self-esteem. I am curious to know how you reconcile dealing with low self-esteem with the Shikshastika.
Yes.
Instruction to be
yes, it's a great
question. Lower than the straw on the street.
Exactly. This is a great question. I studied this. There's a huge misunderstanding that devotees have about low self-esteem and how it's different from humility. Okay, so if you want to get into the study of this, there's a few references. First of all, as I said, you can read the third chapter of the Reflections on Sacred Teachings, Shikshastikam by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Also, there's a brilliant article, and it's by a Prabhupada disciple. Her name is Archana Siddhi Devi Dasi. You can find the article online. The article's title is called Humble and Feeling Good. It's a very deep question, so I'll try and answer it without going too much into detail. See, traditionally, Vaishnavas work out of the mode of goodness. Okay, so what that means is, traditionally, in a healthy Vedic society, when people come to Krishna consciousness, they're already very healthy and functional individuals. They already have healthy self-esteem because they were brought up nicely by their parents. See, in the Vedic society, parents had a lot more time and energy. Life was a lot less stressful. So where does self-esteem come from? There's studies on this, and it's also mentioned in Ayurveda. There's, if you want, there's an ISKCON health magazine called Hope This Meets You in Good Health. There's an article in there, I think it's on Ayurveda and pregnancy for the mother. And it explains so many of these different things. And the article, it quotes some points from a scripture, an Ayurvedic scripture called the Charaka Samhita. Within the Charaka Samhita, there's a section on child psychology. Okay, it's called the Kaumara Bhritya. It's a section of the Charaka Samhita. So Ayurveda explains all of these things very, very clearly. So I'll explain how it works. So what happens is, when the parent brings up the child, especially between the ages of 0 to 4, and this is mentioned by Chanakya, this is also mentioned by Prabhupada. Before the age of 5, the child's intelligence is not developed. So whatever's done to the child, the child is not able to interpret it, because the intelligence allows you to interpret the experiences. So instead, whatever's done to the child immediately goes into the child's subconscious mind. Basically, between the ages of 0 to 5, the child's subconscious mind is exposed, okay, with no filter. So in that time, so Srila Prabhupada, Chanakya, Ayurveda, they all say what you're meant to give the child between 0 to 5 is unconditional love. Between the ages of 0 to 5, the relationship between the child and the mother is the most important, because the mother, if she's proper, She is the symbol of unconditional love. So what you're basically doing between 0 to 5, you're filling the child's mind with the samskar that you are unconditionally loved and important. Okay, Prabhupada explains this. Now, when the child hits the age of 5, the child's intelligence develops. Now, at that point, the father, who's always there, his role becomes more prominent. From 5 to 15, the love of the father becomes more prominent. And what the father is meant to do traditionally is train the child in responsibility. So let's go back again. 0 to 5, the unconditional love of the mother, what you're actually, the samskar you're giving the child is the child's rights. You have rights. You have unconditional rights to care, attention, etc. You are unconditionally important, 0 to 5. That goes into the subconscious mind, which is also this is also correlates with Vedic astrology. So that subconscious mind, that's represented by the moon, mother, feminine, right? Then 5 to 15 is, okay, so the first part, 0 to 5, you have rights. 5 to 15 means you have responsibilities. That's fatherly love, okay? So a healthy child has been brought up with both energies, but the first foundation is you're unconditionally valuable. And then the second foundation on top of that is so is everyone else. So your rights are someone else's responsibilities, and their rights are your responsibility. So you're important and everyone else is important. When the child is brought up properly, that samskar, I'm important and everyone else is important, that is self-esteem in the mode of goodness. You see, if there's an imbalance in any side, the child will have difficulty in relationships as an adult. And we all know this, right? Someone who thinks only about themselves, I'm important, but they don't respect other people, no one wants to be around that person, isn't it? Right? Someone who's puffed up, they only care about themselves, they only care about what they want, and they absolutely have no consideration for other people. No one wants to be around that person. But the other extreme is also toxic. And we see this also. What's the other extreme? The person who did not get love from their parents as a child, they go around the world in their life trying to get everyone else's approval. And what happens? You'll see that because there are many bad people out there in the world, there are many selfish people, there are many people who are ready to exploit someone who just wants to get their approval. So then what happens is you get the other extreme. You get the people pleaser. Even in our movement, I've seen a lot of our youth, because of the patterns of upbringing, they spend their life trying to get approval from other people. And therefore, when they're around the devotees, they'll act devotionally. And when they're around non-devotees, they act non-devotionally because they just want to be accepted. So whatever's going on in the environment, I'm just going to fit in because I'm desperate for approval. If they were brought up with the proper samskars, it'll be much easier for them to practice Krishna consciousness in a very strong way. And we also see in scripture, especially many of the gurus and sannyasis, the reason why they're so powerful is they had very good relationships with their mum. Bhakti Charamaj spoke about that when he was speaking about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's childhood, right? If you study, the women make the men and the men make the women. That's why we're actually interdependent. So the men are meant to protect the women so the women can remain feminine, right? We're not meant to let the women be exploited or degraded, right? But that protection has to also be by affectionate dealings and by encouragement. That's one side. And then the other side is the women are meant to protect the men. In the Memories of Prabhupada DVD number 77, you can find it online. 6 minutes in, you'll hear one of Prabhupada's disciples, her name is Kishori. So she's talking about how Prabhupada said that when the child, he said that the son should get the mother's breast milk. And what does he say? Very, very interesting. He said the mother's breast milk is like liquid affection. And so the child should get the mother's breast milk for as long as possible. And the reason is that when that child, especially the males, the son, because by getting the mother's breast milk, when that son grows into a man, he'll be less enamored by the breasts of women as an adult because he got the mother's breast milk when he was young. Isn't that incredible? In other words, now I studied it, there's an underlying principle. What's the underlying principle? The men require some input of feminine energy. So there's two ways that the man can get the input of feminine energy. Either he gets it in the form of the motherly feminine energy when he's young. But if he doesn't get that, he'll be dependent or more likely to be, because there's other factors that can change this, but he'll be more likely to be dependent upon that feminine energy when he's a male, but more likely to be dependent upon it in terms of chasing women. And especially if he's in a lower mode, he'll be dependent upon that feminine energy by chasing women for illicit sexual activity. Anyway, that's an aside. My point is, to your point, Taksha, there's a difference between low self-esteem and humility. Humility is coming from the mode of goodness. Low self-esteem is coming from the mode of ignorance. So low self-esteem is, I feel inferior to other people, therefore I feel insecure, I feel threatened, and I feel easily disturbed. Humility comes from the mode of goodness. So the simple point is, you can know if you have humility or low self-esteem. If there's humility, you feel enthusiastic about spiritual life, even though you feel insignificant. That's what the Shikshastikam's talking about. And that humility, again, because I studied and gave some seminars on this, that humility, it doesn't come from an inferiority complex. How do we know? Because when we read the writings of the Acharyas, they feel both insignificant and hopeful. Case in point, the perfect example of this is Rupa Goswami's Ashabandha prayers. Na prema shravanadi bhakti apiva. He begins this prayer, na prema, I don't have love of Godhead. Shravanadi bhakti apiva, nor do I have love for the process of shravana, hearing, chanting, etc. He will go on to say, I do not have mystic powers. I don't have good birth. I don't have knowledge. And then what does he say? He says, but because you, dear Lord, give your mercy to the most fallen, I have this unbreakable hope, which is always in my heart. This hope is always giving me pain. So when it's spiritual humility, when it's this Trinada piece in Nietzsche Not verse, what you have is simultaneous, I feel insignificant, but not insignificant because of other people. I feel insignificant because I know how great Krishna is. I feel small because I see how great Krishna is. It's like this. You earn a salary, and it's a nice salary, but now you're hanging out with your billionaire friends. So you're not showing off about your salary because you're around billionaires. Okay, you have a nice salary, but you're not a billionaire. So you feel small, humble, because you know that the people you're around, they're billionaires. Yes, you got a nice salary, you got a nice pay packet, but they're billionaires. So you feel humble based upon who you're around. And this is really important now. And at the same time, you know that the people you're around, they love you. And they want you to be successful. So their opulence is going to support you in coming close to them. So again, the Acharyas, I'm small because I understand how great Krishna, I feel insignificant because I understand how great Krishna is. But I'm also enthusiastic because that same great Krishna loves me, is encouraging me, and is going to help me to be successful. So the very thing that makes me feel small is the very thing that makes me feel hopeful. The very greatness of Krishna that makes me feel insignificant is exactly the same quality of the Lord that makes me feel excited that if I try my best, the most powerful person, Krishna, the supreme personality of God, he's on my side. If I try my best, the most powerful individual in all creation is going to help me. So I can't fail because I've got the best help. That's what it means to have real spiritual humility. And again, when it's low self-esteem, you will see that the person, instead of feeling excited and enthusiastic, they feel despondent. Oh, nothing ever goes my way. Oh, I try and it never works out. Oh, I can't succeed. I may as well give up. That means it's not humility. That means it's just low self-esteem. That's material. It's tamasic. You see? So I hope that gives you a clear understanding of the distinction between the two things and how it relates to the Shikshashtakam. Does that answer your question, Taraka Prabhu?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Okay. Any last question or comment before we end? I think we maybe should end here. It's been 3 hours. Okay, but thank you very much. And as I said, I meant what I said. Feel free to give me any feedback. You got my number on WhatsApp, or you can get my number from other devotees. What you think I do well, anything. You've known me for many years, many of you. And also, where do you think there's opportunities for me to improve in my service? And that includes, if you think, Bhuta-Bhavana, I think you should be doing more of this, or Bhuta-Bhavana, I think there's an opportunity here. I'm open. Now, I will evaluate it carefully. So I can't be a blind follower. I can't lie to you. I never accept anything blindly, but I'm always open to accepting and looking at things and evaluating things. So any feedback will be gratefully received. You can send it to me on WhatsApp. Or you can even message me on my Instagram.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Well, I'm not a butterfly or a bee, but I'm a fly. So I will have a one small correction, which is not spiritual or intellectual, it's just geographical.
Yes.
Sardinia is not a country, it's an island off the coast of Italy.
Okay.
You are a European, so you should know that.
Yeah, I don't pay much attention to geography, to be honest with you. Well, but I take your point.
We're happy you don't, because you pay attention to the right things. I have an example about the person, the sentimental person that thought that the Gita was stolen from a Bible. I was reading the Bible right before I joined. I was mostly reading Psalms, David, because they were beautiful, and then I got a copy of the Sri Upanishad for a few minutes, and I opened it up and I thought, oh wow, this is just like the Bible, but also the answers are included. So that was the difference. The Bible raises some questions, but doesn't really answer them. It's all so very tenuous. And the last thing, which I want to thank you for this mouthful. I mean, we are all fasting from Pandava Nirjal, and this is a very succulent breakfast to all of us. And I want to thank you on my name and the name of everybody I know. And I want to encourage, as we do, the devotees to please unmute yourselves and express their gratitude to you, who have dedicated so much time and energy and wisdom to us.
Before you do so, I know that I still see Jay's hand up. I just want to check if there's one last question before we close. Jay, did you have a question?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, well, first of all, you are a very wonderful person and preacher. The intensity and flow that I perceive from when you speak, it's like you're not even thinking,
You can't keep your mouth.
So please
can you hear me?
Yeah, someone that had unmuted, but they've muted again. Please continue. Sorry.
Okay, I was just saying the intensity and flow of you preaching. It's like something's going through you and right to me and all of us here. So really, really amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your kind words. And I just want to acknowledge my seniors. I know that Taraka Prabhu is a Prabhupada disciple. Thank you for being here. And, so many others who are, very, very senior to me. So I just want to acknowledge that association. And we're very grateful to be in that very, very senior association as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. So my question is earlier you were mentioning how, when you're in a struggling period or you're in a unique situation or at somewhat of a crossroads, you didn't say crossroads, but it kind of felt implied when Krishna has put you in, a situation, where you're in a new community or a new situation, which is the situation that I'm in right now, just in a brand new place and kind of at a time where I'm, consistently asking Krishna for his guidance and saying, like, what do you want from me? What should I do? Like, why have you put me here? And how will this affect my future? How do you want my future to be? And please allow me to act in a way that's pleasing to you. So I'm wondering if you're in that situation, or when you were in that situation in the past, what would you do to ensure that you're acting in a way that's pleasing to Krishna. So the reality that ends up manifesting, because you're kind of in a possibility space where a couple different realities can manifest, that you either choose the one that he wants, or you just relinquish control of choosing and let him just create it for you. I'm wondering like how you would handle such a situation on like a general in a general way without knowing specifics.
No, it's actually a very good question. I've studied this particular point. I've heard the answer many times in lectures by my spiritual master, and I've experienced it many times in my own life. So I'll tell you exactly what I've seen. The first and most important thing is sincerity. Actually, is that you sincerely want to be Krishna conscious. You know, you see, and I'll tell you what Bhakti Tirtha said about this, and I've seen this in my own life many times. He said, and you can find this in the classes, in his classes. He says it many times. He said, how do you know what Krishna wants? He said, no problem. He said, do the very best in the service that you're doing right now, and Krishna will organically make the arrangement. And I've seen that. That's true. I've experienced that multiple times in my own life. That means whatever service you're doing now, you do it sincerely with devotion. You inquire sincerely from the devotees. You explain your situation sincerely. And when those ingredients all come together, you should be in no doubt that where you end up as a next step is where Krishna wants you, but it has to be that we're sincere. And let me make a caveat. That doesn't always mean that the next step is always easy. Again, going back to what I said about tests and how sometimes, the tests are actually, are to strengthen us. So we shouldn't judge if we're progressing necessarily by the externals. We judge that we're progressing by our enthusiasm and our willingness and our eagerness to keep serving. You see? We judge our enthusiasm by our taste for hearing and chanting. We judge our progress by our development of a service attitude. You know? And again, the example is Prabhupada. We see many things. He had 2 heart attacks on the ship coming to the West. So if we look at things superficially, maybe he must have made a wrong decision because there were 2 heart attacks. That's not how we judge these things. It's not necessarily an external judgment. It also requires a bit of humility, because we will understand what Krishna wants through proper connection with sincere authorities as well, you know? So that humility is that, I'm relatively new. I'm going to take guidance and advice from people who've been around a lot longer, who've experienced what I'm experiencing, but they've experienced it many times, you know? And if my sincerity is there, along with good association, then honestly, you don't need to worry. You don't need to worry. You will get to where you're going to. But I will emphasize this because I've seen this is the most important factor. Sincerity means I'm sincerely trying to serve as best as I can and sincerely trying to learn as best as I can. Okay? Again, going back to what Prabhupada said, religion without philosophy is sentimentalism. And so to Sarvatna's point, we can be sentimental because I'm serving, but I'm not also trying to understand why I'm serving, what I'm doing, the philosophy. And then philosophy without religion is mental speculation or fanaticism. That's the other extreme, where there's philosophy, there's a knowledge, but I'm not doing any service. I'm not trying to serve. I'm not trying to develop a service attitude. That's also going to be problematic. So we want to make sure that we do both. We want to engage in service practically, and we want to engage in a deep understanding of Krishna consciousness. Who is Krishna? Who are the devotees? How do I improve my service? And when all those combinations come together, you should know that Krishna will manifest and he'll take your devotion. Devotion is like a fragrance. When Krishna smells that, it's like, who's serving me so nicely? Who is this person? And it attracts his attention, and he comes to the person. And then he holds you by the hand. Even if you don't know it, he'll hold you by the hand and he'll lead you to where he wants you to go, just by your sincere devotional service. Does that answer your question, Jay?
Yes, that is an amazing answer. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess the the very question that I'll have, I know you've been on for 3 hours, so you could answer this very, very quickly. Is if we're definitely a lot more sincere than we used to be, but we're still working on getting rid of the impurities that kind of cover are a kind of a dust cloud over the sincere heart. How would you try to overcome that? And that'll be my last question. And thank you so much forever, and like always, this is very, I'm a bit speechless. You're an amazing preacher. Thank you.
No. So we're just repeating what we've heard from others. But to your point, yeah, there's a very clear answer to this. Anyabilasata shunyam ganakama dinavritama nukulina krishna nushilan bhakti uttama. So the description of pure devotional service is an activity done favorably for the pleasure of Krishna, free of the desire for karma and gyan. And the point that's made here is you don't have to be pure to be sincere in your service. You see? So, for example, let's say that it's time to serve prasadam, right? Okay, and you haven't eaten. So you are hungry, but you can still decide, I want to serve this food, this prasadam, to everyone, and I'll have something later on. So it's not that you don't have a desire for food. You have a desire for food, but that doesn't have to control how you serve everyone else. Many of us have been in that situation. It's prasadam time, you may have been hungry, but you still wanted to serve the Vaishnavas. So in a similar way, we may not be 100% pure, but that doesn't mean that we can't serve with a pure intention, you see? So you can still have a pure motive, even if you're not fully pure. For example, I remember when I was in Gitanagari in 2005 and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was preparing to leave, there were many devotees and they were talking about their love for Prabhupada. So they weren't pure devotees necessarily at that time, but Prabhupada was so attractive, so magnanimous and so powerful that they just wanted to please him. You see? It doesn't mean that they didn't have any other anarthas in their heart, but that wasn't the impetus for their service. So even with anarthas in the heart, we can still have an impetus, or the purpose or the motive for our service can be to please Srila Prabhupada or please our spiritual master. So in that way, you just have to focus on why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah. So only time and only devotional service over time will remove all the anarthas. It will happen over time through sincere practice. But even in the beginning stages, the motive behind why I'm serving, there's two motives which are acceptable. One motive is motivation for devotional service in the mode of goodness, which is I want to become purified. That is a motivation for devotional service in goodness, and that scripture accepts it as favorable. The other one is I'm serving because I want to please Guru and Krishna. So both of those, that's a transcendental motive, but both of them will get you to the same place. So if you're doing something because you want to please Guru and Krishna, okay, Guru Maharaj gave me this instruction, Prabhupada said this, therefore I'm trying to do it to please them, then your spiritual life will make a lot of advancement and you'll get a lot of blessings, a lot of spiritual mercy, because the actual purpose of your activity is to please Krishna. So it's the same activity, but if it's done with a different purpose, there's a different result. One practical thing that I try to do is at the beginning of the day, I try to pray to my spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada, because I always consider they're together, never as separate. I pray to them both for that kind of help so that we can do things for their pleasure. We can do what they want us to do, you know, and then trying to follow through in the day, but with that kind of understanding, that can help. Okay. So I hope you have answered your question, Jay. And I think we should, it's in the UK, it's 3:15 in the afternoon. So I'm gonna take your leave and have some lunch. Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to be here with all of you, because I'll tell you honestly, in sharing this, I really feel this is for my own reflection as well. For my own reflection, so I can apply this better in my own spiritual life. So very grateful. And like I said, I'm coming to Gitanagari late July, early August, and I can't wait to see all of you when I come. Okay, take care.
Please, devotees, unmute yourself and be vocal about your gratitude.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. Thank you for your
Amazing.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Hare
Haribol Jamil.
Krishna.
Great to see you, Jamil. Haribol.
Thank you so much.
Looking forward to seeing you in July, Prabhu. Haribo, you have to
Wait to
come over,
see you.
come
I miss
over
you
for
guys a lot.
prasadam.
I miss you guys a lot. I can't wait to see you. Can't wait to see you. Haribol.
Thank you.
Thank you, Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hiya.